Sir, on the sacred occasion of Magh Purnima and the birth anniversary of Guru Ravidas, I present the budget for the year 2026-2027. Since we assumed office 12 years ago, India's economic trajectory has been marked by stability, fiscal discipline, sustained growth and moderate inflation. This is the result of conscious choices we have made, even in times heightened uncertainty and disruption. Our government, led by Honorable Prime Minister Modi, has decisively and consistently chosen action over ambivalence, reform over rhetoric, and people over populism. We have pursued far-reaching structural reforms, fiscal prudence and monetary stability, whilst maintaining a strong thrust on public investment. Keeping Atmanirbharta as a lodestar, we have built domestic manufacturing capacity, energy security, and reduced critical import dependencies. Simultaneously, we have ensured that citizens benefit from every action of the government, undertaking reforms to support employment generation, agricultural productivity, household purchasing power, and universal services to people. These measures have delivered a high growth rate of around 7% and helped us make substantial strides in poverty reduction and improvement in the lives of our people. Today, we face an external environment in which trade and multilateralism are impaired and access to resources and supply chains are disrupted. New technologies are transforming production systems while sharply increasing demands on water, energy, and critical minerals. India will continue to take confident steps towards Vikasit Bharat, balancing ambition with inclusion. As a growing economy with expanding trade and capital needs, India must also remain deeply integrated with global markets, exporting more and attracting stable long-term investment. As I begin Part A, I want to express my gratitude to the people for standing firmly with us as we forge our way together towards becoming one of the largest economies of the world. Our aim is to transform aspiration into achievement and potential into performance as we ensure that the dividends of growth reach every farmer, the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribes, the nomads, the youth, the poor, and the women. In Vikasit Bharat Young Leaders Dialogue 2026, several innovative ideas were shared with our Prime Minister, which have inspired many of the proposals, making this a unique Yuva Shakti-driven budget. Our government's sankalp is to focus on our poor, underprivileged, and the disadvantaged. To deliver on this sankalp, and given that this is the first budget prepared in Kartavya Bhavan, we are inspired by three Kartavya. Our first Kartavya is to accelerate and sustain economic growth by enhancing productivity and competitiveness and building resilience to volatile global dynamics. Our second Kartavya is to fulfill aspirations of our people and build their capacity, making them strong partners in India's path to prosperity. Our third Kartavya, aligned with our vision of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, is to ensure that every family, community, region, and sector has access to resources, amenities, and opportunities for meaningful participation. This threefold approach requires a supportive ecosystem. The first requirement is to sustain the momentum of structural reforms, continuous, adaptive and forward-looking. Second, a robust and resilient financial sector is central to mobilizing savings, allocating capital efficiently and managing risks. Third, cutting-edge technologies, including AI applications, can serve us as force multipliers for better governance. Reform Express. Our government has undertaken comprehensive reforms towards creating employment, boosting productivity and accelerating growth. After the Prime Minister's announcement on Independence Day in 2025, over 350 reforms have been rolled out. This includes GST simplification, notification of labour codes, and rationalization of mandatory quality control orders. High-level committees have been formed, and in parallel, the central government is working with the state governments on deregulation and reducing compliance requirements. The Reform Express is well on its way and will maintain its momentum to help us fulfill our kartavya. I now move to specific proposals. Under our first kartavya, to accelerate and sustain economic growth, I propose interventions in 6 areas. 1. Scaling up manufacturing in 7 strategic and frontier sectors. 2. Rejuvenating legacy industrial sectors. 3. Creating champion MSMEs. 4. Delivering a powerful push for infrastructure. 5. Ensuring long-term security and stability. And 6. Developing city economic regions. Scaling up of manufacturing in 7 strategic and frontier sectors. Biopharma Shakti, meaning biopharma strategy for health advancement through knowledge, technology and innovation. India's disease burden is observed to be shifting towards non-communicable diseases like diabetes, cancer and autoimmune disorders. Biologic medicines are key to longevity and quality of life at affordable costs. To develop India as a global biopharma manufacturing hub, I propose the Biopharma Shakti with an outlay of 10,000 crores over the next 5 years. This will build the ecosystem for domestic production of biologics and biosimilars. The strategy will include a biopharma-focused network with 3 new national institutes of pharmaceutical education and research, popularly known as NIPERs, and upgrading 7 existing ones. It will also create a network of 1,000 accredited India clinical trials sites. We propose to strengthen the Central Drug Standard Control Organization to meet global standards and approve timeframes through approval timeframes through a dedicated scientific review cadre and specialists. India's Semiconductor Mission 1.0 expanded India's semiconductor sector capabilities. Building on this, we will launch ISM 2.0 to produce equipment and materials, design full-stack Indian IP, and fortify supply chains. We will also focus on industry-led research and training centers to develop technology and skilled workforce. The Electronics Components Manufacturing Scheme, launched in April 2025, with an outlay of 22,919 crores, already has investment commitments at double the targets. We propose to increase the outlay to 40,000 crores to capitalize on this momentum. A scheme for rare earth permanent magnets was launched in 2025 November. We now propose to support the mineral-rich states of Odisha, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu to establish dedicated rare earth corridors to promote mining, processing, research and manufacturing. To enhance domestic chemical production and reduce import dependency, we will launch a scheme to support states in establishing 3 dedicated chemical parks through challenge route on a cluster-based plug-and-play model. Strong capital goods. Strong capital goods capability is a determinant of productivity and quality across different sectors. Towards building this capacity, I propose the following. High-tech tool rooms will be established by central public sector enterprises at 2 locations as digitally enabled automated service bureaus that locally design, test and manufacture high-precision components at scale and at lower cost. 2. A scheme for enhancement of construction and infrastructure equipments will be introduced to strengthen domestic manufacturing of high value and technologically advanced CIE. This can range from lifts in a multi-storied apartment or firefighting equipment in multiplexes, large or small, and to tunnel boring equipments for building metros and high-altitude roads. I also propose a scheme for container manufacturing to create a globally competitive container manufacturing ecosystem with a budgetary allocation of 10,000 crores over a 5-year period. For the labor-intensive textile sector, I propose an integrated program with 5 subparts. 1. The National Fiber Scheme for self-reliance in natural fibers such as silk, wool and jute, man-made fibers and new age fibers. Textile expansion and employment scheme to modernize traditional clusters with capital support for machinery, technology upgradation and common testing and certification centers. 3. The National Handloom and Handicraft Program to integrate and strengthen existing schemes and ensure targeted support for weavers and artisans. Tex Eco Initiative to promote globally competitive and sustainable textiles and apparels. Samarth 2.0 to modernize the upgrade the textile skilling ecosystem through collaboration with industry and academic institutions. Further, I propose to set up mega textile parks in challenge mode. They can also focus on bringing value addition to technical textiles. I propose to launch the Mahatma Gandhi Gram Swaraj initiative to strengthen khadi, handloom and handicrafts. This will help in global market linkage and branding. It will streamline and support training, skilling, quality of process and production. This will benefit our weavers, village industries, one district, one product ODOP initiative and also our rural youth. India has the potential to emerge as a global hub for high quality, affordable sports goods. I propose a dedicated initiative for sports goods that will promote manufacturing, research and innovation in equipment design as well as material sciences. Rejuvenation of legacy industrial clusters. I propose to introduce a scheme to revive 200 legacy industrial clusters to improve their cost competitiveness and efficiency through infrastructure and technology upgradation. Creating champion SMEs and supporting micro enterprises. Recognizing MSMEs as a vital engine of growth, I propose a three-pronged approach to help them grow as champions. Equity support. I propose to introduce a dedicated 10,000 crores SME growth fund to create future champions, incentivizing enterprises based on select criteria. I also propose to top up the Self-Reliant India Fund set up in 2021 with 2,000 crores to continue support to micro enterprises and maintain their access to risk capital. Liquidity support. With TREDS, more than 7 lakh crore has been made available to MSMEs. To leverage its full potential, I propose 4 measures. 1. Mandate TREDS as the transaction settlement platform for all purchases from MSMEs by CPSEs, serving as a benchmark for other corporates. 2. Introduce a credit guarantee support mechanism through CGTMSE for invoice discounting on TREDS platform. 3. Link GEM with TREDS for sharing information with financiers about government purchases from MSMEs, encouraging cheaper and quicker financing. 4. Introduce TREDS receivables as asset-backed securities, helping develop a secondary market, enhancing liquidity and settlement of transactions. Professional support. Government will facilitate professional institutions such as the ICAI, ICSI, ICMAI to design short-term modular courses and practical tools to develop a cadre of corporate mitras, especially in Tier 2 and Tier 3 towns. These accredited para-professionals will help MSMEs meet compliance requirements at affordable costs. Infrastructure. During this past decade, our government has undertaken several initiatives for large-scale enhancement of public infrastructure, including through new financing instruments such as Infrastructure Investment Trust (InvITs) and Real Estate Investment Trust (REITs), and institutions like NIIF and NABFID. We shall continue to focus on developing infrastructure in cities with over 5 lakh population, that is Tier 2, Tier 3 cities, which have expanded to become growth centers. Public capital expenditure has increased manifold from 2 lakh crore in 2014-15 to an allocation of 11.2 lakh crore in BE 25-26. In this coming year, that is financial year 2026-27, I propose to increase it to 12.2 lakh crores to continue the momentum. To strengthen the confidence of private developers regarding risks during infrastructure development and construction phase, I propose to set up an infrastructure risk guarantee fund to provide prudentially calibrated partial credit guarantee to lenders. Over the years, REITs have emerged as a successful instrument for asset monetization. I propose to accelerate recycling of significant real estate assets of the CPSEs through the setting up of dedicated REITs. To promote environmentally sustainable movement of cargo, I propose to 1. Establish new dedicated freight corridors connecting Dankuni in the east to Surat in the west. Operationalize 20 new national waterways over the next 5 years. Starting with National Waterways 5 in Orissa to connect mineral-rich areas of Talcher and Angul and industrial centers like Kalinga Nagar to the ports of Paradeep and Dhamra. Training institutes will be set up as regional centers of excellence for development of required manpower for these waterways. This will benefit youth in the entire stretch of the waterways to train and acquire skills. Further, a ship repair ecosystem catering to inland waterways will also be set up at Varanasi and Patna. And C, launch a coastal cargo promotion scheme for incentivizing a modal shift from rail to road to increase the share of inland waterways and coastal shipping from 6% to 12% by 2047. To enhance last mile and remote connectivity and promote tourism, I propose to give incentives to indigenize manufacturing of seaplanes. A seaplane VGF scheme will be also introduced to provide support for operations. Carbon capture, utilization and storage. Aligning with the roadmap launched in December 2025, the carbon capture, utilization and storage technologies at scale will achieve higher readiness and in end-use application across 5 industrial sectors, including power, steel, cement, refineries and chemicals. An outlay of 20,000 crore is proposed over the next 5 years for this purpose. City economic regions. Cities are India's engines of growth, innovation and opportunities. We shall now focus on Tier 2, Tier 3 cities and even temple towns which need modern infrastructure and basic amenities. This budget aims to further amplify the potential of cities to deliver the economic power of agglomerations by mapping city economic regions based on their specific growth drivers. An allocation of 5,000 crore per CER over 5 years is proposed for implementing their plans through a challenge mode with a reform-cum-result-based financing mechanism. In order to promote environmentally sustainable passenger systems, we will develop 7 high-speed rail corridors between cities as growth connectors, namely Mumbai to Pune, Pune to Hyderabad, Hyderabad to Bengaluru, Hyderabad to Chennai, Chennai to Bengaluru, Delhi to Varanasi, Varanasi to Siliguri. Financial sector. The Indian banking sector today is characterized by strong balance sheet, historic highs in profitability, improved asset quality and coverage exceeding 98% of villages in the country. At this juncture, we are well placed to futuristically evaluate the measures needed to continue on the path of reform-led growth of this sector. I propose setting up a high-level committee on banking for Vikasit Bharat. High-level committee on banking for Vikasit Bharat to comprehensively review the sector and align it with India's next phase of growth while safeguarding financial stability, inclusion and consumer protection. The vision for NBFCs for Vikasit Bharat has been outlined with clear targets for credit disbursement and technology adoption in order to achieve scale and improve efficiency in the public sector NBFCs As a first step, it is proposed to restructure the Power Finance Corporation and Rural Electrification Corporation. I propose a comprehensive review of the foreign exchange management non-debt instruments rules to create a more contemporary, user-friendly framework for foreign investments consistent with India's evolving economic priorities. Corporate bond market. I propose to introduce a market-making framework with suitable access to funds and derivatives on corporate bond indices. I also propose to introduce total return swaps on corporate bonds. Municipal bonds. To encourage the issuance of municipal bonds of higher value by larger cities, I propose an incentive of 100 crore rupees for a single bond issuance. 100 crore rupees for a single bond issuance of more than 1,000 crore. The current scheme under Amrit which incentivizes issuances up to 200 crores only, will also continue to support smaller and medium towns. That will also continue to support the smaller and medium towns. Ease of doing business. Individual persons resident outside India, PROI, will be permitted to invest in equity instruments of listed Indian companies through the Portfolio Investment Scheme. It is also proposed to increase the investment limit for an individual PROI under the scheme from 5% to 10%, with overall investment limit for all individual PROIs to 24% from the current 10%. Emerging technologies including AI. 21st century is technology driven. Adoption of technology is for the benefit of all people. Farmers in the field, women in STEM, youth keen to upskill, and Divyangjan to access newer opportunities. The government has taken several steps to support new technologies through AI Mission, National Quantum Mission, Anusandhan National Research Fund, and Research and Development and Innovation Fund. Our second kartavya is to fulfill aspirations and build capacities. Close to 25 crore individuals have come out of multi-dimensional poverty through a decade of our government's sustained and reform-oriented efforts. Our government has therefore decided to place a renewed emphasis on the service sector to provide a pathway to fulfilling aspirations of a youthful India with the following measures. I propose to set up a high-powered Education to Employment and Enterprises Standing Committee to recommend measures that focus on services sector as a core driver of Vikasit Bharat. This will make us a global leader in services with a 10% global share by 2047. The committee will prioritize areas to optimize the potential for growth, employment and exports. They will also assess the impact of emerging technologies, including AI, on jobs and skill requirements and propose measures thereof. To create a range of skilled career pathways, a new range of skilled career pathways for our youth, I propose interventions in the following sectors. Health. Existing institutions for allied health professionals will be upgraded and new AHP institutions established in private and government sectors. This will cover 10 selected disciplines, including optometry, radiology, anesthesia, OT technology, applied psychology and behavioral health, and add 1 lakh AHPs over the next 5 years. A strong care system covering geriatric and allied care services will be built. A variety of NSQF-aligned programs will be developed to train multi-skilled caregivers, combining core care and allied skills such as wellness, yoga, and operation of medical assistive devices. In the coming year, 1.5 lakh caregivers will be trained. Hubs for medical value tourism. To promote India as a hub for medical tourism services, I propose to launch a scheme to support states in establishing 5 regional medical hubs in partnership with the private sector. These hubs will serve as integrated healthcare complexes that combine medical, educational and research facilities. They will have Ayush centers, medical value tourism facilitation centers, and infrastructure for diagnostics, post-care and rehabilitation. These hubs will provide diverse opportunities, job opportunities for health professionals, including doctors and AHPs. Ancient Indian yoga, already respected in several parts of the world, was given a mass global recognition when Honorable Prime Minister took it to the UN. Post-COVID, Ayurveda gained a similar global acceptance and recognition. Exporting quality Ayurveda products helps farmers who grow the herbs and youth who process the products. To meet growing global demand, a few more steps are being taken. I propose to 1. Set up 3 new All India Institutes of Ayurveda. 2. Upgrade Ayush pharmacies and drug testing labs for higher standards of certification ecosystem and make available more skilled personnel. 3. Upgrade the WHO Global Traditional Medicine Center in Jamnagar to bolster evidence-based research, training and awareness for traditional medicine. Animal husbandry. Livestock contributes to close to 16% of farm income, including of poor and marginal households. To scale up availability of veterinary professionals by more than 20,000, I propose to roll out a loan-linked capital subsidy support scheme for establishment of veterinary and para-veterinary colleges, veterinary hospitals, diagnostic laboratories, and breeding facilities in private sector. Collaboration between Indian and foreign institutions will also be facilitated. Orange economy. India's animation, visual effects, gaming and comics sector, AVGC sector, is a growing industry projected to require 2 million professionals by 2030. I propose to support the Indian Institute of Creative Technologies, Mumbai, in setting up AVGC content creator labs in 15,000 secondary schools all over the country and 500 colleges. The Indian design industry is expanding rapidly, and yet there is a shortage of Indian designers. I propose to establish, through Challenge Route, a new National Institute of Design to boost design education and development in the eastern region of India. Education. Our government will support states through challenge route in creating 5 university townships in the vicinity of major industrial and logistics corridors. These planned academic zones will host multiple universities, colleges and research institutions, skill centers and residential complexes. In higher education, STEM institutions, prolonged hours of study and laboratory work pose some challenges for girl students. Through VGF, Viability Gap Funding and capital support, one girls' hostel will be established in every district. To promote astrophysics and astronomy via immersive experiences. 4 telescope infrastructure facilities will be set up or upgraded. The National Large Solar Telescope, the National Large Optical Infrared Telescope, the Himalayan Chandra Telescope and the Cosmos 2 Planetarium. Tourism. The tourism sector has the potential to play a large role in the employment generation, forex earnings, and expanding the local economy. I propose to set up a National Institute of Hospitality by upgrading the existing National Council for Hotel Management and Catering Technology. It will function as a bridge between academia, industry, and government. I also propose a pilot scheme for upskilling 10,000 guides in 20 iconic tourist sites through a standardized, high-quality, 12-week training course in hybrid mode in collaboration with the Indian Institute of Management. A national destination digital knowledge grid will be established to digitally document all places of significance, cultural, spiritual and heritage. This initiative will create a new ecosystem of jobs for local researchers, historians, content creators and technology partners. India has the potential and opportunity to offer world-class trekking and hiking experience. We will develop ecologically sustainable mountain trails in Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand and Jammu Kashmir. Also in Araku Valley in the Eastern Ghats and Podigai Malai in the Western Ghats. Turtle trails along key nesting sites in the coastal areas of Odisha, Karnataka and Kerala. And 3 bird watching trails along the Pulikat Lake in Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu. It's on the border. Under the visionary leadership of Honorable Prime Minister, we established the International Big Cat Alliance in 2024. This year, India is hosting the first ever Global Big Cat Summit, where heads of governments and ministers from 95 range countries will deliberate on collective strategies for conservation. Heritage and culture tourism. I propose to develop 15 archaeological sites, including Lothal, Dholavira, Rakhi Gadi, Adichanallur, Saranath, Hastinapur and Leh Palace into vibrant experiential cultural destinations. Excavated landscapes will be open to the public through curated walkways. Immersive storytelling skills and technologies will be introduced to help conservation labs, interpretation centers and guides. The sports sector provides multiple means of employment, skilling and job opportunities. Taking forward the systematic nurturing of sports talent which is set in motion through the Khelo India program earlier, I propose to launch a Khelo India mission to transform the sports sector over the next decade. The mission will facilitate an integrated talent development pathway supported by training centers which are foundational, intermediate and elite levels. B, systematic development of coaches and support staff. C, integration of sports science and technology. D, competitions and leagues to promote sports culture and provide platforms. And E, development of sports infrastructure for training and competition. Our third Kartavya aligns with our vision of Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas towards Vikasit Bharat. This requires targeted efforts for 1. Increasing farmer incomes through productivity enhancement and entrepreneurship, with special attention to small and marginal farmers. B. Empowering Divyangjan through access to livelihood opportunities, training and high-quality assistive devices. C. Empowering the vulnerable to access mental health and trauma care. D. Focus on the Purvodaya states and the Northeast region to accelerate development and employment opportunities. Fisheries. We will undertake initiatives for integrated development of 500 reservoirs and Amrit Sarovars. 2. Strengthen the fisheries value chain in coastal areas and enable market linkages involving startups and women-led groups together with fish farmer producer organizations. Animal husbandry. To provide quality employment opportunities in rural and peri-urban areas, we will support the animal husbandry sector in entrepreneurship development through A. A credit-linked subsidy program. B. Scaling up and modernization of livestock enterprises. C. Enhanced creation of livestock, dairy and poultry. Enhanced creation of livestock, dairy and poultry focused integrated value chains. And D. Encourage creation of livestock farmer producer organizations. High value agriculture. To diversify farm outputs, increase productivity, enhance farmers' incomes and create new employment opportunities, we will support high value crops such as coconut, sandalwood, cocoa, cashew in the coastal areas, agar trees in northeast and nuts such as almonds, walnuts and pine nuts in our hilly regions. These all of them will be supported. India is the world's largest producer of coconuts. About 30 million people, including nearly 10 million farmers, depend on coconuts for their livelihood. To further enhance competitiveness in coconut production, I propose a coconut promotion scheme to increase production and enhance productivity through various interventions, including replacing and non-productive trees with new saplings or plants or varieties in major coconut growing states. A dedicated program is proposed for Indian cashew and cocoa to make India self-reliant in raw cashew and coconut production and processing, enhance export competitiveness, and transform Indian cashew and Indian cocoa into premium global brands by 2030. Sandalwood. Sandalwood is closely linked to India's social and cultural heritage. Our government will partner with state governments to promote focused cultivation and post-harvest processing to restore the glory of the Indian sandalwood ecosystem, to rejuvenate old, low-yielding orchards and expand high-density cultivation of walnuts, almonds, and pine nuts, we will support a dedicated program to enhance farmer incomes and in bringing value addition by engaging youth. Bharat Vistar, that is virtually integrated system to access agricultural resources. I propose to launch Bharat Vistar, a multilingual AI tool that shall integrate the AgriStack portals and the ICAR package on agricultural practices with AI systems. This will enhance farm productivity, enable better decisions for farmers, and reduce risk by providing customized advisory support. She Marts for rural women-led enterprises. Building on the success of Lakpati Didi program, I propose to help women take the next step from credit-linked livelihoods to being owners of enterprises. Self-help entrepreneur, She Marts will be set up as community-owned retail outlets within the cluster-level federations through enhanced and innovative financing instruments. Empowering Divyangjan. Divyangjan Kaushal Yojana. Information technology, AVGC sectors, hospitality and food and beverages sectors often offer task-oriented and process-driven roles which are suitable for Divyangjan. We will ensure dignified livelihood opportunities through industry-relevant and customized training specific to each Divyangjan group. Divyang Sahara Yojana. Timely access to high-quality assistive devices for all eligible Divyangjan is a fundamental need. I propose to 1. Support the Artificial Limbs Manufacturing Corporation of India, Alimco, to set up and to scale up production of assistive devices, invest in R&D and AI integration, strengthen PM Divyasha Kendras, and support setting up of assistive technology marts as modern retail style centers where Divyangjan and senior citizens can see, try and purchase assistive products. Reaffirming our commitment to mental health and trauma care. There are no national institutes for mental health care in North India. We will therefore set up a NIMHANS 2 and also upgrade national mental health institutes in Ranchi and in Tezpur as regional apex institutions. Emergencies expose families, particularly the poor and vulnerable, to unexpected expenditure. We will strengthen and increase these capacities by 50% in district hospitals by establishing emergency and trauma care centers. On Purvodaya states and northeastern regions. Purvodaya. I propose the development of an integrated East Coast industrial corridor with a well-connected node at Durgapur, creation of 5 tourism destinations in 5 Purvodaya states, and the provision of 4,000 e-buses. Buddhist sites in northeastern region. The northeastern region is a civilizational confluence of Theravada and Mahayana or Vajrayana traditions. I propose to launch a scheme for development of Buddhist circuits in Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Assam, Manipur, Mizoram and Tripura. The scheme will cover preservation of temples and monasteries, pilgrimage interpretation centers, connectivity and pilgrim amenities. 16th Finance Commission. On 17th November 2025, the 16th Finance Commission submitted its report to the President. As mandated under Article 281 of the Constitution, The government is to lay the report along with the explanatory memorandum on the action taken report on the recommendations of the Commission in Parliament, which, Sir, Honourable Speaker, you have allowed me to do at the commencement of this session. The government has accepted the recommendation of the Commission to retain the vertical share of devolution at 41%, as recommended by the Commission. I have provided 1.4 lakh crores of rupees to the states for the year 2026-2027 as Finance Commission grants. These include rural and urban local body and disaster management grants. Fiscal consolidation. Government has been delivering on our fiscal commitments consistently without compromising on social needs. To strive towards accepted standards of fiscal management in Budget 25-26, I had indicated that the central government would target reaching a debt-to-GDP ratio of 50 plus or minus 1% by 2030-31. In line with this, the debt-to-GDP ratio is estimated to be 55.6% of GDP in BE 26-27, compared to 56.1% of GDP in RE 25-26. A declining debt-to-GDP ratio will gradually free up resources for priority sector lending and expenditure by reducing the outgo on interest payments. One of the main operational instruments for debt targeting is the fiscal deficit. I am happy to inform this august House that I fulfilled my commitment made in 2021-2022 to reduce fiscal deficit below 4.5% of GDP by 25-26. In RE 25-26, the fiscal deficit has been estimated at par with BE of 2025-26 at 4.4% of GDP. In line with the new fiscal prudence path of debt consolidation, the fiscal deficit in BE 26-27 is estimated to be 4.3% of the GDP. The revised estimates of the non-debt receipts are 34 lakh crore rupees, of which the centre's net tax receipts are 26.7 lakh crore. The revised estimate of the total expenditure is 49.6 lakh crore rupees, of which the capital expenditure is about 11 lakh crores. Budget estimates 2026 to 2027. Coming to 26-27, the non-debt receipts and the total expenditure are estimated as 36.5 lakh crore and 53.5 lakh crore respectively. The centre's net tax receipts are estimated at 28.7 lakh crore rupees. To finance the fiscal deficit, the net market borrowings from dated securities are estimated at 11.7 lakh crore rupees. The balance financing is expected to come from small savings and other sources. The gross market borrowings are estimated at 17.2 lakh crore rupees. I will now move to Part B. Part B, direct taxes. Honourable Speaker, sir, I now present my proposals on direct taxes. New Income Tax Act. In July 2024, I announced a comprehensive review of the Income Tax Act 1961. This was completed in a record time, and the Income Tax Act 2025 will come into effect from 1st April 2026. The simplified income tax rules and forms will be notified shortly, giving adequate time to taxpayers to acquaint themselves with its requirements. The forms have been redesigned such that ordinary citizens can comply without difficulty. Ease of living. I propose that any interest awarded by the Motor Accident Claims Tribunal to a natural person will be exempt from income tax, and any TDS on this account will be done away with. I propose to reduce TCS rate on the sale of overseas tour program package from the current 5% and 20% to 2% without any stipulation of amount. I propose to reduce TCS rate for pursuing education and for medical purposes under the Liberalized Remittance Scheme, popularly known as LRS, from 5% to 2%. Supply of manpower services is proposed to be specifically brought within the ambit of payment to contractors for the purpose of TDS to avoid ambiguity. Thus, TDS on these services will be at the rate of either 1% or 2% only. I propose a scheme for small taxpayers wherein a rule-based automated process will enable obtaining a lower or nil deduction certificate instead of filing an application with the assessing officer. For the ease of taxpayer holding securities in multiple companies, I propose to enable depositories to accept Form 15G or Form 15H from the investor and provide it directly to various relevant companies. I propose to extend time available for revising returns from 31st December to up to 31st March with the payment of a nominal fee. I also propose to stagger the timeline for filing of tax returns. Individuals with ITR 1 and ITR 2 returns will continue to file till 31st July, and non-audit business cases or trusts are proposed to be allowed time till 31st August. TDS on sale of immovable property by a non-resident is proposed to be deducted and deposited through resident buyers and his or her PAN-based challan instead of requiring a TAN, which is a temporary accounting number. To address practical issues of small taxpayers like students, young professionals, tech employees, relocated NRIs, and such others, I propose to introduce a one-time 6-month foreign asset disclosure scheme for these taxpayers to disclose income or assets below a certain size. This scheme would be applicable for two categories of taxpayers, namely A, who did not disclose their overseas income or assets, and B, who disclosed their overseas income and or paid due tax but could not declare the asset acquired. For category A, the limit of undisclosed income or asset is proposed to be up to 1 crore rupees. They need to pay 30% of fair market value of asset or 30% of undisclosed income as tax and 30% as additional income tax in lieu of penalty, and would thereby get immunity from prosecution. For category B, asset value is proposed to be up to 5 crore rupees. Here, immunity from both penalty and prosecution will be available with a payment of fee of 1 lakh rupees. Rationalizing penalty and prosecution. Multiplicity of proceedings are hindrance to the ease of doing business. I propose to integrate assessment and penalty proceedings by way of a common order for both. There will be no interest liability on the taxpayer on the penalty amount for the period of appeal before the first appellate authority, irrespective of the outcome of appeal process. Further, quantum of prepayment is being reduced from 20% to 10% and will continue to be calculated only on core tax demand. As an additional measure for reducing litigation, I propose to allow taxpayers to update their returns even after reassessment proceedings have been initiated, and an additional 10% tax rate over and above the rate applicable for the relevant year. The assessing officer will then use only this updated return in his proceedings. There is already a framework for immunity from penalty and prosecution in the cases of underreporting. I propose to apply this framework for immunity to misreporting too. However, in such a case, the taxpayer will need to pay 100% of the tax amount as an additional income tax over and above the tax and interest due. Penalties for certain technical defaults, such as failure to get accounts audited, non-furnishing of transfer pricing audit report, and default in furnishing statement for financial transactions are proposed to be converted into fee. I propose to rationalize prosecution framework under Income Tax Act while maintaining a careful balance for deterrence in some serious offence. Non-production of books of account and documents and requirement of TDS payment where payment is made in kind are being decriminalized. Further, minor offences will attract fine only. The remaining prosecutions will be graded commensurate with the quantum of offence. They will entail only simple imprisonment with maximum imprisonment reduced to 2 years and power to courts to convert even those into fines. There is no penalty. There is no penalty presently for non-disclosure of non-immovable foreign assets with aggregate value less than 20 lakh rupees. I propose to also provide them with immunity from prosecution with retrospective effect from 1/10/2024. Cooperatives. Deduction is already allowed to a primary cooperative society engaged in supplying milk, oilseeds, fruits or vegetables raised or grown by its members. I propose to extend this deduction to also include supply of cattle feed and cotton seed produced by its members. I propose to allow inter-cooperative society dividend income as deduction under the new tax regime to the extent it is further distributed to its members. I further propose to allow exemption for a period of 3 years to dividend income received by a notified national cooperative federation on their investments made in companies up to 31/1/2026. This exemption would be allowed only for dividends further distributed to its member cooperatives. Supporting IT sector as India's growth engine. India is a global leader in software development services, IT-enabled services, knowledge process outsourcing services, and contract R&D services relating to software development. These businesses and their segments are quite interconnected with each other. All these services are proposed to be clubbed under a single category of information technology services with a common safe harbor margin of 15.5% applicable to all. The threshold for availing safe harbor for IT services is being enhanced substantially from 300 crore rupees to 2,000 crore rupees. Safe harbor for IT services shall be approved by an automated rule-driven process without any need for tax officer to examine and accept the application. Once applied by an IT services company, the same safe harbor can be continued for a period of 5 years at a stretch at its choice. For IT services companies who want to conclude advanced pricing agreement, APA, I propose to fast-track unilateral APA process for IT services and endeavour to conclude it within a period of 2 years. The period of 2 years can be extended by a further period of 6 months on taxpayers' request. I propose to extend the facility of modified returns available to the entity entering APA to its associated entities also. Attracting global business and investment. Recognizing the need to enable critical infrastructure and boost investment in data centers, I propose to provide tax holiday till 2047 to any foreign company that provides cloud services to customers globally by using data center services from India. It will, however, need to provide services to Indian customers through an Indian reseller entity. I also propose to provide a safe harbor of 15% on cost in case the company providing data center services from India is a related entity. To harness the efficiency of just-in-time logistics for electronic manufacturing, I propose to provide safe harbor to non-residents for component warehousing in a bonded warehouse at a profit margin of 2% of the invoice value. The resultant tax of about 0.7% will be much lower than in competing jurisdictions. To provide fillip to toll manufacturing in India, I propose to provide exemption from income tax for 5 years to any non-resident who provides capital goods, equipment or tooling to any toll manufacturer in a bonded zone. To encourage vast pool of global talent to work in India for a longer period of time, I propose to provide exemption to global, non-India sourced income of a non-resident expert for a stay period of 5 years under notified schemes. I propose to provide exemption from minimum alternate tax, the MAT, to all non-residents who pay tax on presumptive basis. Tax administration. I propose to constitute a joint committee of Ministry of Corporate Affairs and Central Board of Direct Taxes for incorporating the requirements of income computation and disclosure standards, the ICDS, in the Indian Accounting Standards Ind AS itself. Separate accounting requirement based on ICDS will be done away with from the tax year 27-28. To support Prime Minister Modi's vision of homegrown accounting and advisory firms to become global leaders, I propose to rationalize the definition of accountant for the purposes of safe harbor rules. Other tax proposals. Change in taxation of buyback was brought in to address the improper use of buyback route by promoters. In the interest of minority shareholders, I propose to tax buyback for all types of shareholders as capital gains. However, to disincentivize misuse of tax arbitrage, promoters will pay an additional buyback tax. This will make effective tax 22% for corporate promoters. For non-corporate promoters, the effective tax will be 30%. TCS rate for sellers of specific goods, namely alcoholic liquor, scrap and minerals, will be rationalized to 2%, and that on tendu leaves will be reduced from 5% to 2%. I propose to raise the STT on futures to 0.05% from the present 0.02%. STT on options premium and exercise of options are both proposed to be raised to 0.15% from the present rate of 0.1% and 0.125% respectively. We reformed the taxation landscape for corporates in 2019 by providing them a simplified regime with lower tax rate so that they could productively focus on business rather than on claim of deductions and exemptions. To encourage companies to shift to the new regime, set-off of brought forward MAT credit, minimum alternate tax credit, is proposed to be allowed to companies only in the new regime. Set-off using available MAT credit is proposed to be allowed to an extent of 1/4 of the tax liability in the new regime. MAT is proposed to be made final tax, so there will be no further credit accumulation from 1st April 2026. In line with this change, the rate of final tax is being reduced to 14% from the current MAT rate of 15%. The brought forward MAT credit of taxpayers accumulated till 30th March 2026 will continue to be available to them for set-off as above. Indirect taxes. I shall now take up proposals related to indirect taxes. My proposals for customs and central excise aim to further simplify the tariff structure, support domestic manufacturing, promote export competitiveness, and correct inversion in duty. To continue weeding out long-continuing customs duty exemptions, I propose to remove certain exemptions on items which are being manufactured in India or where the imports are negligible. Similarly, to further simplify the process of ascertaining the rate of duty applicable on a particular item, I propose to incorporate certain effective rates in various customs notifications to the tariff schedule itself. I shall now take up sector-specific proposals. Promotion of exports of marine, leather and textile products. I propose to increase the limit for duty-free imports of specified inputs used for processing seafoods for export from the current 1% to 3% of FOB value of the previous year's export turnover. I also propose to allow duty-free imports of specified inputs, which is currently available for exports of leather or synthetic footwear, to exports of shoe uppers as well. I propose to extend the time period for export of final product from the existing 6 months to 1 year for exporters of leather or textile garments, leather or synthetic footwear and other leather products. Energy transition and security. I propose to extend the basic customs duty exemption given to capital goods used for manufacturing lithium-ion cells for batteries to those used for manufacturing lithium-ion cells for battery energy storage systems also. I propose to exempt basic customs duty on import of sodium antimonate for use in manufacture of solar glass. Nuclear power. I propose to extend the existing basic customs duty exemption on imports of goods required for nuclear power projects till the year 2035 and expand it for all nuclear plants irrespective of their capacity. Critical minerals. It is proposed to provide basic customs duty exemption to the import of capital goods required for the processing of critical minerals in India. Biogas blended CNG. I propose to exclude the entire value of biogas while calculating the central excise duty payable on biogas blended CNG. Civil and defense aviation. I propose to exempt basic customs duty on components and parts required for the manufacture of civilian, training and other aircrafts. It is proposed to exempt basic customs duty on raw materials imported for the manufacture of parts of aircraft to be used in maintenance, repair or overall requirements by units in the defense sector. Electronics. To deepen value addition in the consumer electronics sector, I propose to exempt basic customs duty on specified parts used in the manufacture of microwave ovens. Special economic zone. To address the concerns arising about utilization of capacity by manufacturing units in the special economic zones due to global trade disruptions, I propose as a special one-time measure to facilitate sales by eligible manufacturing units in SEZs to the domestic tariff area at concessional rates of duty. The quantity of such sales will be limited to a prescribed proportion of their exports. Necessary regulatory changes will be undertaken to operationalize the measures while ensuring level playing field for the units working in the DTA. Ease of living. To rationalize the customs duty structure for goods imported for personal use, I propose to reduce the tariff rate on all dutiable goods imported for personal use from 20% to 10%. To provide relief to patients, particularly those suffering from cancer, I propose to exempt basic customs duty on 17 drugs or medicines. I propose also to add 7 more rare diseases for the purposes of exempting import duties on personal imports of drugs, medicines and food for special medical purposes used in their treatment. Customs process. India's role and share in the global trade is poised for a major leap in line with our ambition and journey towards Vikasit Bharat. In this regard, I propose many measures for custom processes to have minimal intervention for smoother and faster movement of goods and greater certainty to the trade. Trust-based systems. I propose to enhance duty deferral period for Tier 2 and Tier 3 authorized economic operators, known as AEOs, from 15 days to 30 days. I propose to provide eligible manufacturer importers the same duty deferral facility. This should encourage them to get themselves accredited as a full-fledged Tier 3 AEO in due course. To provide greater certainty and for better business planning, I propose to extend validity period of advance ruling binding on customs from the present 3 years to 5 years. In the spirit of the whole of government approach, government agencies will be encouraged to leverage AEO accreditation for preferential treatment in clearing their cargo. Regular importers with trusted long-standing supply chains will be recognized in the risk system so that the need for verification of their cargo every time can be minimized. Export cargo using electronic sealing. Export cargo using electronic sealing will be provided through clearance from the factory premises to the ship. For import of goods not needing any compliance, filing of bill of entry by a trusted importer and arrival of goods will automatically notify customs for completing their clearance formalities. This will enable goods to be released immediately on arrival. The customs warehouse framework will be transformed into a warehouse operator-centric system with a self-declarations, electronic tracking, and risk-based audit. These reforms will move away from the current system of officer-dependent approvals and reduce transaction delays and compliance costs. Ease of doing business. Approvals required for cargo clearance from various government agencies will be seamlessly processed through a single and interconnected digital window by the end of the financial year. Processes involved in clearance of food, drugs, plant and animal and wildlife products, accounting for about 70% of interdicted cargo, will be operationalized on this system by April 2026 itself. For goods not having any compliance requirement, clearance will be done by customs immediately after online registration is completed by the importer, subject to the payment of duty. Customs integrated system will be rolled out in 2 years as a single integrated and scalable platform for all customs processes. Utilization of non-intrusive scanning with advanced imaging and AI technology for risk assessment will be expanded in a phased manner with the objective to scan every container across all the major ports. New export opportunities to support Indian fishermen to fully harness the economic value of marine resources beyond our territorial waters. The following measures will be taken. A. Fish catch by an Indian fishing vessel in exclusive economic zone or on the high seas will be made free of duty. Landing of such fish on foreign port will be treated as export of goods. Safeguards will be put in place to prevent misuse during fish catch, transit or transshipment. To support aspirations of India's small businesses, artisans and startups to access global markets through e-commerce, I am pleased to announce complete removal of the current value cap of 10 lakh rupees per consignment on courier exports. In addition, handling of rejected and returned consignments will be improved with effective use of technology for identifying such consignments. I propose to revise provisions governing baggage clearance during international travel to address genuine concerns of passengers. The revised rules will enhance duty-free allowances in line with the present-day travel realities and provide clarity in temporary carriage of goods brought in or taken out. There are honest taxpayers who are willing to settle disputes by paying all their dues, but they get deterred due to negative connotation associated with penalty. They will now be able to close cases by paying an additional amount in lieu of penalty. Honorable Speaker, sir, with this I commend the budget to this august House. Jai Hind. One and a half hours.
Item number 3, माननीय वित्त मंत्री जी.
Item number 2, sir.
3.
Sir, with your permission, I rise to lay on the table of the following statements under Section 3(1) of the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act of 2003. Medium-term fiscal policy cum fiscal policy strategy statement and macroeconomic framework statement.
Item number 4, माननीय वित्त मंत्री जी.
Sir, with your permission, I move for leave to introduce the Finance Bill 2026.
प्रश्न ये कि विधेयक को पुनर्स्थापित करने की अनुमति प्रदान की जाए. जो सदस्य इस पक्ष में हाँ गए, जो सदस्य विरोध में ना गए, मेरे विचार में निर्णय हाँ वालों के पक्ष में हाँ वालों के पक्ष में अनुमति प्रदान की जाती है. माननीय मंत्री जी, अब विधेयक पुनर्स्थापित करें.
Sir, I introduce the bill.
माननीय सदस्यगण, आपको सूचित किया जाता है कि माननीय मुख्यमंत्री जी के बजट भाषण की कॉपी पब्लिकेशन काउंटर पर ली जाती है। बजट भाषण और बजट से संबंधित दस्तावेज आपके मोबाइल फोन और मेंबर पोर्टल्स पर ही उपलब्ध है। सभा की कार्रवाई कल सोमवार दिनांक 2 फरवरी 2026 को प्राप्त 11 बजे तक के लिए स्थगित की जाती है।
Reacting negatively, but let's try and get a sense of what this budget means for our viewers and the signal that the finance minister is seeking to send. I'll get Ratin Roy with his hot take on what we've just heard from the finance minister.
Well, I haven't seen the actual numbers yet. She's been remarkably, unlike last year, remarkably shy about telling us even what the nominal GDP growth figure she's taking is. That being said, I'm relieved. It's a boring budget, and I'm a public economist. Boring budget is a good budget. She's met her fiscal deficit targets. You don't have to worry about public debt, viewers. Every public debt target maps onto a unique fiscal deficit target, so you can keep using fiscal deficit. She met her target last year. She has modestly reduced the fiscal deficit further this year. There isn't much tax buoyancy. I suspect there will be expenditure control to achieve this fiscal deficit target. So on the macro front, things are fine. The only new thing I noticed about the budget, other than all this announcing this scheme and that scheme, and Purvanchal, Purvodaya, this happens every year, everyone forgets. I challenge anyone on this panel to remember one thing of that sort that was announced 2 years ago. Nobody remembers, it's all optics, everyone does it. But one thing she has done which is unique, as to my knowledge, there's no chartered accountant here, she's announced 2 tax exemptions, one of which is for 10 years and the other one is for 22 years. That is remarkably forward-thinking. If she'd done it for more things, I'd be very relieved. I can't remember what exactly they were for. I think rare earths or minerals.
No, data centers till 2040.
AI, that is excellent. If only we could do that for everything we do, tariffs, tax, etc. But she's made a good beginning there. Yeah, for the rest, I don't have much to
Harsh,
say.
the markets are down about 1,030 points, and the securities transaction tax on futures being increased. How much money is she likely to mop up by something like that? Because it's marring sentiment for sure. Is it worth the pain being inflicted?
So I think some revenue increase will be there because these are transaction taxes, unlike capital gains taxes. But I'm not quite sure if it's worth the sentiment hit. The market is down 1 percentage point. There was something there for capital markets in the form of buyback taxes being reduced for minority or non-promoter shareholders. But promoter shareholders will pay something on top of that. So there has been a reduction on the buyback tax side, but nothing on the dividend tax side, nothing on LTCG or STCG. And the STT increase is obviously what the market is responding to. So I think this was an error of commission.
Radhika, what are you making of the manner in which the budget speech was read? Because she's not told you how much defense is going up by or the schemes. So it's very differently presented. What's the messaging through the manner in which the budget's been presented, you think?
So it's actually quite interesting, Rahul, because as Ratin mentioned, while she gave the fiscal deficit target, and of course we're moving from the deficit to the debt as a fiscal anchor, we really don't know what nominal GDP growth estimates have gone into that calculation, and so where that growth is exactly going to come from. So there are really no big headlines in that sense. But as I was listening to part A of the speech, I mean, there were a lot of details, but my sense is that there has been a lot of focus on job creation. She's really picked up on a lot of very labor-intensive sectors. She's got textiles, she's got toys, footwear, she had MSMEs, there are a lot of details. Tourism is being seen as a big, there's a focus on also enhancing agricultural productivity. Another area we don't talk about often in India, but she mentioned, and I think that's quite noteworthy, is the care economy. They've spoken a lot about investment in the care economy, and that actually also creates a lot of employment for women. The other thing is that there was an underlying theme about how you can actually create more employment for women and boost female labor force participation rate, which has been something that the government has actively been working on, because bringing more women into the workforce is also a driver of GDP. So things like, even having a hostel in every district for women, all that helps in bringing women out, addressing some of the social barriers they face in engaging in economic activity. And of course, I think on the MSME side, which are the engines of job growth, and which I think think is important because, again, I mean, I keep harping on this labor-intensive sector because it's so important for job creation. But if you look at the firm size distribution in labor-intensive sectors, it's dominated by MSMEs. And they're addressing barriers on credit. Like she talked about strengthening trades, she talked about the Mitra, she talked about integrating them in global value chain and the exemptions. So these are small things, and it would be interesting to see how they actually play out to boost job creation and therefore spur demand in the economy.
I just want to go through 2 or 3 points which struck me as being important, and we'll bring in our panelists who've joined us as well at this stage. The capex spend is estimated at 11 lakh crores. So this was one hard number that appears to have gone up. There's a lot which a tax consultant or a chartered accountant would actually be able to see or figure out based on what we've seen. The new Income Tax Act comes into effect. So that's something that is important. There is a proposal to rationalize the prosecution framework as far as taxes are concerned. There's a lot under taxes which has happened. All IT services to be clubbed under a single category with a common safe harbor margin of 15.5%. Threshold for availing safe harbor for IT services to be enhanced. Would you agree that a lot of this actually is tax-based? Tax compliance, simplifying the tax structure, and ensuring that prosecution doesn't necessarily happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is around ease of taxation. If you see the timelines being extended, the different categories being talked about. Also, I think the decriminalization and focus on penalties rather than imprisonment. That's a very progressive thing. I think the other thing which in the budget we should be also looking at is the focus on MSMEs, access to capital, the focus on manufacturing, the right areas around that. I think when we look at the budget, I think the focus was a lot on employment generation rather than just trying to talk about the...
But the big headline at this moment, make no mistake, is the fact that the markets are now down almost 2 percentage points. A, the negative impact of securities transaction tax being increased, and B, the fact that long-term capital gain, there was an expectation that maybe that would be reduced. That hasn't happened. So all of this, Harsh, really bad for your business?
I think we'll be fine going forward, but for today, obviously, it's an issue. I think maybe...
You have to tell us what you're really thinking. Can't give us the sanitized version when you're so badly off.
I think the STT was a misstep because, as you rightly mentioned, the revenue uptake is not worth the damage to the sentiments. Because the market was expecting something on the capital gain side. If that was not possible to be given, perhaps this could also have been postponed. The buyback tax is a progressive measure, but that again, there is an exception for the promoters. So it only goes so far. I think going forward, the eyes from the market's point of view will be RBI's decision. So what the next MPC meeting does, and on the India-US trade deal, because right now this was a big expectation which is not panned out from the budget's point of view.
Prasenjit Bose, were you impressed with the focus that the government's laying on MSMEs and trying to protect and bolster them?
Well, I think it was indicated in the economic survey itself, because once the problem has been diagnosed, I think what the government is trying to do through this budget is, while not accepting the failure of Make in India, they are basically trying to give another push, Make in India push, to MSMEs and exports. I hope it works. But what I am slightly skeptical of is the fact that, first of all, this entire 1.5 hour long speech, this is entirely focused on a very narrow segment of the economy. So where is anything about agriculture? Where is anything about the outside the formal sector of the economy? There is a huge informal economy in our country, and if we do not take the numbers, the inflation numbers or the GDP numbers at face value, I think the living standards of the people are an issue, with the real wages not increasing or declining for a large segment of the population. I think that this is this budget's main problem is that it is just too narrow. The focus is not broad-based in terms of the entire population, and it is putting too much, almost all the eggs in the basket of tax concessions, duty cuts to revive exports and especially manufacturing.
There is one important thing which we missed out on, an outlay of 40,000 crores to capitalize on the momentum of the semiconductor mission. That is so critical to so many parts of our economy. So that's certainly something that's gone up. But if I can just bring you in,
and ask you, how would you actually look at the budget? The markets are 1,300 points down, the Sensex, right? They obviously expected a lot more. How would you assess this budget?
Yeah, as an industrialist, I don't think the barometer or budget is the stock market on that day, to be very honest with you. And I don't agree that this budget doesn't have a lot of things for industry. It has a lot for industry. I don't think the industry was expecting tax cuts and all that.
Right.
And I didn't expect capital gain tax also. I never came in the room with that expectation. And the reason is very clear. Okay? They have done a lot already in the last few budgets. This budget was always supposed to be of a reform agenda. And we have seen the tax reform bit come out quite clearly in this budget. And I think industry welcomes it. I believe tax certainty is more important than tax cut today.
Right.
What industry requires is a clear idea how I will proceed, how litigation will proceed. Idea of decriminalization is great idea. Idea of ensuring that what I call the TDS, TCS is simplified, which is great. I also really like the fact that certain key industries where we require support have been given. For example, EI has been given, semiconductors, as you rightly say, has been given, data centers have been given. They are encouraging nuclear private sector participation in nuclear energy. Now look at agri. You cannot say that nothing has been given to agri. Look at the fact that value-added crops like coconut, nuts. Now in India, we are importing nuts. And I sometimes feel why we can grow all the nuts. So I think that is something very important they have done. Marine, which is in my mind very important part of the export. Even the FTA also talks of, the European FTA talks of a priority sector in this, what you call first advantage in this. So that has been talked about. So overall a very responsible budget, a budget for the common man. Also a budget, if you ask me honestly, I'll just take a small thing, Divyan, for example, that word was taken 3 times. I think that is what is required.
Okay, one of the big announcements in the budget was that there will be a tax cut for those offering cloud services to data centers. Now, given the fact that across the world, there's a big clamor to try and bring data centers into particular geographies. Ratin Roy, do you think that might actually move money and decisions around where these data centers get set up? The fact that there's a tax holiday till 2047?
I think so. I think it's a very important step she's taken. Because if tax was an impediment to setting up data centers in India, now no one can say it is. I plan to go back to the south because we are at the cutting edge of this. I don't see them coming to UP or Bihar. And encourage now the state governments to go and get those data centers on the ground this year, because now we have everything we need from the central government. I wanted to make a point, if I may,
please,
on the tax. I have a question now. Do you think that this is a tax, it's the engineering and the plumbing reforms? Have they begun now, and is that likely to be the focus of the government for the next few years? Because I'm at the moment in a dispute where the tax department is asking me, I've given them the birth certificate of my mother, I'm their only child. My mother's dead, and her money was transferred to me. She's saying, no, prove that she's financially dead. I'm yet to understand this. So you have to give the finance minister this. She's working against a very powerful, very entrenched bureaucracy that is used to having their way and undertaking, questions, tax assessments, using their own discretion, the bureaucracy.
And it's going to be a simplified form.
And I think she's trying her best, and we should support
spoke
her.
About that.
Yeah.
No, but the fact also is, Harsh, that about, the recent SEBI study shows that 90% day traders are actually losing money on the transactions that you're doing. On top of that, you go and impose an additional tax on securities transaction tax. What's the message? I mean, if you look at the bloodbath, the graphic on your screen is very illustrative. You just see how the markets tank, because it's a very negative announcement, it's very small upside, if at all, for the government.
I think the broader motivation is to reduce
day trading.
Reduce trading, or what is seen as speculation in day trading or day of expiry trading in futures and options. I think that has been the government's point of view. Even in the last budget and last economic survey, SEBI has been moving in that direction. I think it's the broader context of where the market was today and whether this could have been done later or it could have been paired with something on the capital gain side. That is what is probably worrying the market more than this step in isolation.
You think, Ratin, it's a good idea to try and push people away from daily trading, speculation? Is it something that the government should really be looking at trying to achieve?
See, I started my life as a stockbroker, and I gave it up within a year and a half. I found it quite boring personally. My belief is, if you're stupid enough to come to the stock market without deep pockets, you're going to be gamed. So I don't think the government should prevent people from being gamed. You may try and educate the investor, But if people are greedy, they're going to lose money. And day traders are greedy. They expect returns to come, by purely intervening in the market. They listen to wrong advice. So I don't think the government should play mummy to them. Let them lose some money. It's good for everybody.
Weekly expiries, just for the viewers' sake, has been reduced. So now we are going back to monthly options. A lot of taxes have been increased. This is not the only one. So a lot of steps have been taken, and already volumes are down. So this is only step 2 or 3.
No, my question is it an objective the government should be seeking to achieve?
My personal view is my personal.
No, because look at what Ratin is saying as well. You lose money, you learn your lesson, you back off.
No, I think that first of all, if you look at what has happened over the past, especially post-COVID phase, the number of people, especially the younger generation, people who are entering the workforce, their attitude towards the market has changed very dramatically. Now, I am not saying that that entirely is bad thing, but a lot of it is froth, and a lot of it is what Professor Roy just said, is pure speculation. Now, we should promote investments, the government should be promoting investments which actually generate jobs, not, this kind of activity which has no impact on the real economy and which, just produces gamblers and punters.
Can I just make one quick point? At this time, Rahul, we would usually be looking at what's going to cost more, what's going to cost less. Yes. And our entire team has been internally trying to look at this, still at a macro level, to ask what are we going to pay more for. There is no immediate implication based on what Nirmala Sitharaman has said today on what's going to cost more and what's going to cost less. It would be there in the fine print, but there's nothing obvious.
A lot of import duty cuts have taken place.
For example, on nuclear power plants till 2035, customs duties have come down, critical minerals customs duties have come down, biogas blended CNG custom duties are down, and components of civilian and defense aircraft custom duties are down. So they're trying to focus on critical sectors that they believe are strategic for them and reduce customs duties there.
But no implication for the common person. This food item is going to go down. This dairy product is going to go down.
Would all this lead to an export surplus or an import surplus? That is the million-dollar question, that if ultimately you are reducing customs duties, it will help the industry where all those things go into input as inputs. But whether that leads to a surge in exports, that's the critical question.
So can I just summarize this by saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, taxes more or less remain the same. It's simpler now to pay your taxes, and your cost of living for the moment is essentially the same.
I agree, and that is what industry wants. See, GST was the big piece. It has been announced.
Yes.
Income tax, honestly speaking, we are at a lower level than many other countries. Let us be clear. Now, what this budget does is that certain sectors where government believes they need support, which have been listed down, they have supported them. And they have overall simplified the laws. In my mind, more simplification could have still happened. In fact, if you ask me where is left, I was expecting more to happen. I was thinking of complete decriminalization. It has not happened. They have still kept the criminal process provisions. And I was expecting more, that we call dispute resolution mechanisms to come in terms of settlement, mediation, resolution committees. That is what is required. That is required to unlock what I call capital, private capital, which is required. And people are slightly afraid. Why should an Indian invest abroad and not in India? So I was expecting that to an extent will happen. But we need more of that. That's what I'm saying. And to answer your question, this budget was not about getting a shampoo price down. That was in the GST. And on the custom fund also, I was not expecting, because we actually wanted to make in India for the world. So we don't want to reduce that also in the first place.
So life goes on as normal. There is nothing here.
I think the biggest thing is there is no burden on you.
Positive.
No, earlier,
there is
for 10 years, I was asked, what were you expecting? I would say, my God, my taxes increased. The good news is no increase has happened.
No, so what is being done clearly is an effort being made to try and incentivize manufacturing in the aviation sector in India, because you've got customs duties on raw materials for manufacturing parts, maintenance, repair coming down. Incentives for indigenization of seaplane manufacturing have been introduced. Customs duty exemption on components, parts for manufacturing of civilian training aircrafts and other aircraft. Do you think this is likely to work, Harsh? The fact that you've given significant incentives to try and encourage manufacturing of different kinds of aircraft within India?
So I think industrial and trade policy requires to be very granular and nuanced.
Sure.
So if you're giving incentives, there are certain things where you actually have to reduce the import duties, and certain things, I agree with you fully, where the final product import duties have to go up. So duty inversion have to go. So I'm sure this has been probably discussed with the specific industry in question and only done then. So I don't think any and every duty cut is problematic for Indian manufacturing. A lot of it is actually very, very helpful.
No, but I can actually offer a bit of an answer on this. Apart from Hindustan Aeronautics, it's several companies like Lockheed Martin or Boeing or Airbus which have tied up with Indian partners and are manufacturing for a global supply chain over here. So therefore, if the cost of inputs and components comes down, it would certainly help them. That helps our economy, employment in this country. It increases manufacture of components and assemblies for the international aviation market. But whether this actually results in Indian manufacturers building planes, I'm not sure. And can I just also suggest, this seaplane thing has always been a red herring. Seaplanes have failed in the Indian aviation scene. It's not been seen to be commercially viable.
No, but even in terms of manufacturing, the component is generally step 2. Look what happened with electronics, right? We first did PLI for basic assembly of cell phones.
Yeah.
Right now, as you yourself said, we are doing components PLI. So once the assembly is there, then the ecosystem around it goes there. And then instead of a tariff, sometimes you can do a PLI. So you can do both tariff and a subsidy. So I think first is to get that manufacturing into India. The next step would be to
just as a piece of trivia, this is the third shortest budget speech. In 2020 it was 2 hours 42 minutes, 2019 was 2 hours 15 minutes. This one was just 1 hour 24 minutes. So it's her third shortest budget speech, and also indicating that it's business as usual. There's a signal of continuity, and she doesn't want to go on and on, as it were. She's kind of made her point. Now you deal with it. The markets are tanking, although there's been a bit of a recovery since. There's been a bit of a recovery since. But that's the way. She doesn't want to get into the details like she did when she spoke almost twice as much as she's done today, Radhika.
I just wanted to come in, on this issue about the reduction in the customs duty. I think, yes, there is the long-term objective of improving manufacturing competitiveness, but also we have to look at this in the short term. Because on 1st January, EU's GSP preferences were removed, which means that until the trade agreement comes into effect, domestic manufacturers will have to face the full EU import duty. And at the same time, while exports might have appeared to be resilient last year, there was a lot of front-loading of exports as well. So this is going to be a very difficult year for exports. So a lot of these, what seem very nuanced, very micro, perhaps very non-interesting details, are perhaps done keeping in mind what the exports industry is going to go through this year.
Let's get a word in from Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General CII. Welcome back, Mr. Banerjee. What's your assessment and reading of what we've heard from the Finance Minister?
I think the initial reaction would be, while we are looking at the fine prints, it's remained on the course of fiscal prudence. It's remained on the course. When you look at the fiscal, when you look at the debt to GDP ratio, all of that are very, very critical to have the fundamentals going strongly. Second, I think it is also focused a lot on urban centers, which we had talked about earlier. I think that's a very good thing to happen, because and sectors which are employment oriented, employment generating, both in the services as well as manufacturing. Quite a bit on the mid-sized companies that we had talked about as far as manufacturing was concerned. That was good. So one can go on, but then there are little things for everyone, including from high tech to.
But were you expecting more big bang reforms?
Reforms are there. Actually, if you really look at, reforms are spread across many areas. Reforms are also there. I mean, if you really look at it from the point of view of reforms, if you look at the banking sector, there is this high-level committee which has been formed. We need large banks. We need consolidation there. So one looks at that to be a very positive development. One looks at also even decriminalization on the tax part of it. There are many small areas of stuff. We were probably not seeing that much coming up in the bold, but it talk about now implementation is an issue in terms of disinvestment. We hope that one achieves a figure which was mentioned.
She's left all the details away. Usually she'd announce a disinvestment.
Yeah, but
targets, defense spending. She's left all.
Good to see the.
She wants everyone to read her budget document.
And that macro level presentation of which way we are heading is critical. I think the budget really needs to go into those details about, yes, whether the health is fine, prudence is there, and whether we will be able to navigate through the type of storms that we are looking in the headwinds. Skilling was very important. Look at the healthcare sector. I think that was a critical thing to have been focused upon. Very, very important. And I think ease of living is something that she really talked about and focused upon. And I think the logistics is another issue. If we were talking about cost of doing business, when you are seeing logistics focus in the budget in terms of the freight corridors, and I think that's going to be another critical area to look upon. So all in all, I would think there are many things for spread across. And I think that's very interesting. It's a very different way it was presented.
Ratin Roy, if the government says that the fiscal deficit will come down from 4.4, which we said and we achieved this year, to 4.3, is that good enough or is that not ambitious enough?
That's perfect.
Why?
That's absolutely perfect, because what it does is two things at once. There is no need now to make non-inframarginal changes in the fiscal deficit. The 3% target has value because our financial savings are low. And if the center and the states take over 6% of GDP, borrowing from our financial savings, we don't borrow abroad for public debt, that only leaves 3% for the private sector. So this is to give space to the private sector. That being said, the private sector is not investing. As I said to your guest, raise your game. If you raise your game, I can say we lower the fiscal deficit to 3.9. But if government is going to do all the heavy lifting, then it should keep the fiscal deficit more or less constant. I think what she's done is absolutely right, because reducing it slightly sends a signal that yes, we can. Now, I want to make two comments. One is, this is the first budget speech in a short while, in a long time. I'm listening to people from industry have come, maybe more will come. I'm not saying game-changing. I'm very comforted by that, because game-changing can't happen every year. So perhaps you should make this a practice and say game-changing only when the game changes. Second, there is a disappointment, I'm getting it now, from the international policy community. Not a big disappointment. They were expecting a framework for reforms. And this sort of scattershot, as you're rightly saying, reform signals, is something that will disappoint them, because the biggest thing, I think, in their view, holding back India is a reforms framework for progress ahead. That is not there in the budget. I don't believe it's the place to do it. But nevertheless, it's the only economic policy document we have. The economic survey didn't do it. So there is disappointment. You talked about reforms, but there's no framework.
Laying out a very clear reform framework, that where is it that we are going from here, should have been laid out in the budget, is the argument that Dr. Roy makes.
I think if you really look at the macro picture, it really talks about that India is not doing anything which is knee-jerk, excepting for, it's not doing anything knee-jerk, but focusing on a path which is futuristic in terms of I still would like to give emphasis on fiscal prudence. I would still like to give focus on making factors of investment easier. I would even look at, even if you look at the taxation part of it, there are much in terms of decriminalization, small offences being just put into financially rather than putting into a decriminalization offensing. So I think there are many areas that we had one had talked about in terms of making it easier to do business, easier to live, easier to transact with India. Those are, I think, those focus. India has to be on track. India has to be on track and not take those offensive sort of positions which it didn't take. And I think that's very,
okay,
very
we've
clear.
got a guest. If you just hold on for 1 second, we've got Vivek Gupta, partner at Deloitte, who joins us at this stage. Thanks very much for being with us. You know, the markets have not reacted well at all to this budget. It's down now 1.03%. It was down more than 2% at one stage. If you were to look at this budget, would you say ease of doing business, ease of taxation, simplifying tax structures, removing penalties is what the focus of this? And would you call it a holding budget in a sense, and by no means a big bang budget?
Actually, I think the one thing that has not been talked about is the whole focus on structural stability. I call this budget not just as a holding budget. I call this budget as a crowding in capital into high growth India budget. And I'll tell you 2 or 3 reasons why I say that. One, by indicating fiscal prudence, you are structurally reducing cost of capital of the economy as a whole, therefore helping investments. So that is one big thing that has been done. On the tax side, reforms around penalties, reforms around prosecution, reforms around decriminalizing means, again, that ease of doing business is enhanced. See also the change on, for example, on buyback taxation. I think it's a very intelligent change, helps small shareholders, helps listed equities, and so on and so forth. See the change made where Indian diaspora can now get in capital back into listed equities and the enhancement of limits there, providing a mid-path route between FDI and FPI. Again, very intelligently done to get an investment into the country. The entire plethora of changes made around IT companies will help GCCs vastly, give them tax certainty, and that's a sector which is very strong in India in any way. So with these 2 or 3 measures, tax decriminalization, getting Indian diaspora to invest, structurally indicating a very disciplined budget, and then doing stuff around GCCs, I call this not just as a holding budget. I would say it's a crowd in capital into high growth India budget.
It's also something that's helped the common taxpayer. I mean, 2 points over here. An extension of time available to revise returns with the payment of a nominal fee, and to allow taxpayers to update returns even after reassessment proceedings have been completed with 10% tax. So again, encouraging people to pay. What she is proposing is nominal. We don't know the rates. But again, the opportunity to pay tax has gone up. Vivek?
That's right. That's right. Building a culture of compliance, right? Even the whole measure, and I'm yet to see the fine print, but even the whole measure around foreign students, etc., within certain threshold limits, being able to declare foreign assets, calling penalties fines or fees, making them deductible and making them also automatic, reducing the deposits required for litigation from 20% to 10%. Some of these fine prints haven't really been sort of talked about too much, but overall accent on simplification and compliance.
Tax aspect, and perhaps you'd like to come in on this. To provide a tax holiday till 2047 to any foreign company that provides cloud services by setting up data centers in India, this is huge.
This is huge.
So what is huge. So break it down for us.
So I think there are 2 parts of it, right? One part is that if you have already heard of some of the data center investments which are coming in and which have been announced.
Google and
Microsoft and many other hyperscalers, right? We think that will actually continue a lot. And, I think this was being also talked about by Mr. Goel that, we would probably expect that to double in the coming days because of the tax holiday, right? The other expected, focus on critical power and nuclear power, because all these data centers can't run without power, right? I think that's also something which they're focused on. And I think when they're looking at how they have looked at it has to be exported back, at the same time, how you look at, the data center services to be given, inside the country. I think that's also a very nice balance which they have been able to get in there.
Also semiconductors, the fact that the government is now putting in 40,000 crores, to increase the outlay to 40,000 crores to capitalize on the momentum of the semiconductor mission. We keep talking about resilient supply chains, also manufacturing semiconductors and building our fabs over here. But we cannot have a futuristic electronics industry or manufacturing with that state unless we get semiconductors sorted, right? With or without China's help. Again, how would you look at the semiconductor mission?
I think ISM 2.0, putting in 40,000 crores is an excellent decision. As I was saying, industrial policy is not just about tariffs, it's also about incentivizing key strategic sectors, and semiconductors is obviously one of them. Gradually, we'll go to the 2-3 nanometer kind of semiconductors manufacturing by 2030 or so. So now semiconductors, putting in more power reforms, as you were mentioning, getting in more investments in cloud. Remember, there was a conditionality there that it has to be geared towards Indian users. For those. So we'll have to read the fine print. But there is an element, I believe, of strategic autonomy there as well while getting in investments. So we'll see the fine print when we see that. This is extremely important to create the new AI economy because models are getting commoditized, as important as they are. But you cannot commoditize the semiconductor part, you cannot commoditize the solar electricity grid part.
She spoke about when the Finance Commission, the fact that the recommendations of the Finance Commission have been accepted, the share of devolution stands at 41%. And a provision of 1.4 lakh crore rupees to the states for FY27, which is what the Finance Commission grants had recommended. We don't have the fine print yet, but that was supposed to have the potential of becoming a political hot potato. How do you think she's playing it?
Well, it may, because you see, from the point of view of the southern states, this is all tied up with delimitation.
Correct.
So if the southern states have a grouse that they are essentially getting very little of the resources that they put into the center, and that is happening because A, the vertical devolution for all states gives the vast majority of the money to the center, while the heavy lifting has to be done by the states in terms of actual development expenditure. And B, that the horizontal devolution, the biggest weight in the formula is the inverse of per capita GSDP, some version. I was chief economist at 13th, I had mine, but it's essentially that. That means the poorer you are, the more money you get. What she has signaled is the vertical devolution stays where it is. So you're not expecting all states to get more money. Now, if the horizontal devolution does not change and give significantly more money to the southern states, the peninsular states, there's going to be a political firestorm coming.
I think one part on the Finance Commission which is very important, we don't know the fine print, but the last one, 15th Finance Commission spoke about having a non-lapsable fund for the defense budget, which was not accepted.
There's no mention of the word defense in anything over here.
So I had tried that. I was very careful.
But can I just say that generally speaking, there is not, in the last several budgets, no direct mention of the defense budget in what, it's always, so we'll have to see what if capital expenditure goes up. That's all that it boils down to.
But even capital expenditure.
But I was just saying that the non-lapsable part, if we can do in the 16th, we'll have to see what Dr.
Extremely bad fiscal practice. It is, you cannot partition.
There is an Appropriations Act. There is a legal issue there.
It's a very good thing they didn't do it. You can't tie the government hand and say.
But at the same time, the Defense Ministry does need, for indigenization purposes, some flexibility to think beyond 1 year horizons in terms of capex.
You see, the way it gets done in the Defense Ministry in terms of spends is because all of the services get an enhanced allotment now for quote-unquote emergency procurement. That money goes like this.
So there's a lot of focus.
And so orders take place there. It's the traditional way of getting orders done for defense, which takes forever. There's an L1 system of ours, right? And a whole lot of other things which are painfully slow.
So the president of CIA, Rajiv Memani, now joins us. Mr. Memani, what is your best sense of the manner in which the finance minister presented her budget and the message she's seeking to communicate? There's a lot of what you typically expect with the budget, not made public, at least in her speech, and a lot of focus on Part B, which again is different from what we've seen in previous years.
Yeah, and thanks Rahul. I think you're right. I think there was a lot of emphasis on Part A also. I think the way they laid out, the 7 focus areas that we discussed about, the focus on MSMEs and this 10,000 crore fund that's been created, the focus on infrastructure, at least 1.5 lakh in some areas, and the high-speed rail, I think, is a good one because 80 to 90% of the value addition happens in India, and so I think the economic activity that it creates within India is positive. I think on the municipal bonds, I think a lot of focus on the cities and trying to see how you can create, 5,000 crores for cities above 5 lakhs. So they'll create a competitive process through that. So I would say a lot of focus on tourism, cities, the services sector.
Also a new semiconductor mission 2.0 and a focus on rare earth chemicals. So she's trying to ensure that some of these new age sectors are taken care of.
Yeah, and what was interesting was that if you actually see, unlike in the previous years where a lot of these focus translated much more into incentives, this time it was much more around the ecosystem build-up and skills. So I think it looks like it's more, whether it was tourism, whether it was the other areas, I think that was, I think, positive. On financial on the financial sector also, I think the realization at least that now for the Viksit Bharat, a lot of things have to change, and hopefully this high-level committee gets set up quickly and they have good participation, and the changes that are required to be made on the banking side, I think that are made. On the Part B, I think a lot of focus on simplification, as we discussed, whether it was the penalty reduction and some of the nitty-gritties on TCS and others, which were niggling people unnecessarily because the TCS rates were very, very high. I think buyback tax has been a big ask for a lot of people. And I think amongst all the sectors, if I just have to do a blind test of one which seems to have got the maximum benefit, I would say it will be electronics manufacturing. I think they had lots of issues on, if they got capital goods, if a subcontractor got capital goods just for some time, whether that will get taxed or not and everything. So they've clarified safe harbors. And the other ease thing is the safe harbor for IT, widening the definition of IT services and having a safe harbor of 15.5%. So earlier that limit was 300 crores, I think, which they've raised to 2,000 crores. And if you looked at most of the APAs, they were getting done at 14, 15, 16%. So they've given that at 15.5%. The one that I think came as a positive surprise was data centers. I was not expecting that they would.
Do you think just that tax relief holiday till 2047 brings in more data centers into India?
Yeah, I think it gives one relief because the massive cap. I honestly feel that 22 years is a long time, so we should read the fine print whether it is 15 years within 22 years, because it's a very long time. I mean, I've never seen a relief being given for 22 years.
No, but will it?
Yeah, it will
impact investment decisions.
It will impact because it reduces your, most of these data centers are set up with a fixed return. So, the return is whatever, 12%, 13% dollar return. So I think it makes it much more impactful. Therefore, more companies, it makes India more competitive. So I think more companies will look at setting up data centers and others. So I think it's a positive sign, and it should encourage much more. Plus, they've also provided a safe harbor to say that if you're providing data center services to a related entity, then up to 15%, at a transfer pricing of 15%, you can claim tax benefit on that. So I would say on the data center, I was surprised that.
Let's get a word in on Kunal Bahl as well. Set up Snapdeal, now runs the startup division of CII. Kunal, welcome. Do you think that this tax holiday till 2047, and even Ratin Roy and Rajiv Mani both making the point, it's quite unusual to have such a long tax holiday. Do you think that brings in more data centers into India and impacts the decisions of those setting up these data centers and the focus the government is laying here?
Thanks for having me, Rahul. Look, actually, on budget day, we tend to talk a lot about that day's announcements, but actually, whether it's the data center announcement or the biopharma manufacturing or the semiconductor, if you look back the last 3-4 years, this seems like a concerted effort towards building blocks for a larger building. We've seen the 1 lakh crore RDI fund being announced, the 1,000 crore space tech fund being announced all over the last couple of years. So today's announcements are probably more bricks in the same building. And whether it's 15 years or 22 years, we'll find out the details. But is it a step in the right direction? It absolutely is. And I think all these infrastructure moves are very, very important for the India of 2047.
Government capex is up about 9% to 12.2 lakh crore rupees. Radhika, do you think that's a fair increase in government spend? Because some people seem to be suggesting that the government could have been potentially more aggressive in how much it's wanting to spend on capacity expansion.
Well, if you look at the amount last year, it's an increase of about 11%. And I think we weren't expecting to see a dramatically large increase in that number. I think the question is what that number is as a percentage of nominal GDP. I suspect it's going to remain the same as last year. And I think that's kind of fine because we need that sustained public capex. But at the same time, it's important that it doesn't crowd out private investment. So I think that, in terms of the number, I'm fine. But what I'd be more interested in seeing is what is the disaggregated allocation of that public capital expenditure, which are the sectors it's exactly going to. Is it, just capital intensive projects with long gestation periods? Or how much of it is actually going to translate into improved productive capacity of the economy in the immediate short and medium term? So the devil is in the details, and we don't have those yet.
We've got a couple of reactions. These are the first reactions from the opposition, from the Congress party coming in. Let's listen in.
लेकिन सर अभी पार्लियामेंट को यूज करेंगे लेकिन सर अभी पार्लियामेंट को यूज करेंगे
बताऊं यार, डिटेल्स तो बहुत कम मिले ना। जैसे कि 3-4 हेडलाइन थे, लेकिन जब हम इंतजार कर रहे थे कि ऑल इंडिया इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ आयुर्वेदा कहाँ आएगी, हमारे केरला में चाहिए हमें। हमारे तो बहुत लंबी ट्रेडिशन आयुर्वेदा के, लेकिन केरला का नाम नहीं सुना। फिशर कोकोनट तो शायद केरला ही हो सकते हैं, क्योंकि मेरे ख्याल में भारत का सबसे ज़्यादा बड़ा केरला कोकोनट प्रोड्यूसिंग स्टेट तो केरला ही है। तो वो तो होना चाहिए। वैसे भी फिशरीज़ में हमें कुछ बेनिफिट होना चाहिए। लेकिन जब शिप रिपेयर के बारे में बोला और वाराणसी और पटना के बारे में बोला, केरला के बारे में कुछ नहीं सुन सका, तो ये सब हमें ज़रा सा आश्चर्यजनक है। लेकिन ये भी कहूँ कि शायद डिटेल्स बजट डॉक्यूमेंट में होंगे, पढ़ा नहीं, अब तक सिर्फ भाषण सुने हैं। भाषण में तो बहुत कम डिटेल्स है जो हमें जरूरी है।
बजट में कोई खास नहीं है। प्रधानमंत्री और नड्डा जी सिर्फ ताली बजा रहे थे और बीजेपी का एमपी का भी समझ नहीं आ रही थी क्या हो क्या रहा, मैडम क्या बोल रही है। मीन्स ये सिर्फ डायरेक्शनलेस बजट है और कोई कॉन्क्रीट ये नहीं है। दोबारा एक ही सपना दिखाने वाली बात ही कर रहे थे और कब तक के सपना दिखाते रहेंगे। एक बजट में ही सपना दिखा रहे, हकीकत में कुछ हो ही नहीं रही है।
यही हाल रहा तो लोहे पर पीतल चढ़ा करके जेवर बनाने पड़ेंगे। और ये बजट गरीब के समझ के बाहर है। जो बुनियादी चीजें हैं, शिक्षा, स्वास्थ्य, आप सोचिए उत्तर प्रदेश का हाल आपने सुना होगा, देखा होगा। पोस्टमार्टम होना है किसका और पोस्टमार्टम के लिए ले किसको जा रहे हैं। ओटी में जाना किसको था, ले किसको जा रहे हैं। ये तो स्वास्थ्य व्यवस्था का हाल है। और शिक्षा का हालत ये है कि बिना शिक्षा के हम विकसित भारत कैसे बनाएंगे। विकसित भारत का सपना अगर देखना है तो शिक्षा क्षेत्र में हमें ज्यादा से ज्यादा बजट देना पड़ेगा।
One of the interesting things we are picking up is the massive increase in defense spending. Capital outlay for the defense sector up about 22%, going up to 2.19 lakh crore rupees. The defense budget stands at 7.8 lakh crore rupees. The big jump is in aircraft and aero engines from 48,000 crores to about 63,000 crores, but 21% increase. Vishnu, potentially indicating that they're planning to make some big announcements on weapon purchases.
Yeah, no, and there are two of them. One is the Rafale deal, which is in the range of above $35 billion, and one for at least 6 made in India submarines. That will be in the range of approximately $7 billion. Obviously, it's not a one-time payment, not at all. But they are creating space for this because it's the biggest defense budget hike I have seen in many, I don't remember something, it's about 21%.
No, but this also happens on the back of Operation Sindoor, showing the need to spend on buying new defense equipment.
But that 21% hike actually does, we'll have to wait to see which amount of that is capex. I would suggest a significant amount for the first time. So this is welcome news.
This is the capital outlay. So 21%
I think 21% is the overall hike, but we've got a breakup of that. Of that, the capital hike as opposed to last time has gone up, right? The financial year 26-27 capital outlay is up 21.8
That's what I'm saying.
To 2.19. So that's a very big hike.
Okay, everyone's picking up some fine print. So since Rajiv Memani needs to leave, I'm going to get him to just, because you're getting lots of messages from your big team taking you through the fine print. So give us some of what you're picking up from the fine print which wasn't there in what the finance minister said.
No, nothing that much in the fine print. I think obviously gift benefit has been the tax exemption, which was for 10 years. I think that's been extended to 20 years. Again, defense spending is strong. I was just just absorbing the budget speech in itself and the exact numbers. That's what I was looking at. But again, on the overall, I would say on the MSME side also, which we have, and the infrastructure side. One is this REIT and InvIT, and we'll have to understand more how will they use some of the PSU assets and government real estate assets into REIT and InvITs. I think that unlocks a lot of value. If they're doing that, I haven't seen any disinvestment numbers, but in terms of asset monetization, I think this could be an interesting way of looking at asset monetization.
We'll let Rajiv Memani leave for the time being. He'll come back later, but Ratin Roy?
Yeah, I have some data now, which is quite interesting.
Yes.
So other than non-tax revenue, if you're looking at last year's performance, BE compared to RE, tax revenue, every other revenue source is down. And every expenditure source is also down, which essentially something, by the way, is not unique.
No, it's
this
not
has happened
unique.
for the last 8 or 9 years. The government of India has been prudent by shrinking its total spending. Most people don't get this as a percentage of GDP. That's why I don't like this lakh crore nonsense. Defense budget, very interesting. There's a huge shortfall in the capital X RE compared to the BE, which means they weren't able to spend the money. So now they have made it
proposed to spend it.
I really hope they can spend it.
No, but there's another detail over here. But
if
go
I
ahead.
can just add to this, because you see this happened last year as well, and that is why when we are the budget numbers which the finance minister is announcing, we are saying that this year she is saying 12.2 lakh crore she's going to, that's the public capex. For the last 2 years, the public capex, including this year, the public capex they are falling short by a huge margin. So these numbers don't have any credibility. And once the capital outlay falls short in 1 year, you are rolling over to the next year.
By 3%.
Yeah, so that's
yes.
not a, so you know what happens is that your revenue is not, your revenue shortfall is also, because you have to keep your fiscal deficit within a range. It can't be brought down further because your private investment is not happening in that manner. And you can't increase it because your debt will go up. So this budget ultimately is all about playing safe. And you are showing a degree of complacency.
Okay, let Mr. Mukundan come in on that.
Can I call it fiscal prudence?
That more of the same.
Positive.
He's calling it a play-safe budget. Let Mr. Mukundan come in with his take on the budget.
I really think what I said in the morning is what has been delivered. I said build forward. This is not a time for big bang, because fundamentally he calls it playing safe, but I say build forward is much sharper definition. And I also said in the morning, you're not going to come at one suite of, but it's going to be very targeted. It's going to be very specific sectors. If you look at where she's focused on biopharma, semiconductor, rare earth, chemical parks, high-tech tool room, construction equipment, container manufacturing. I mean, each one of them is very sharply targeted. And on the capex point, I just want to tell you the spending which you're talking about, we have stopped doing annual expenditure numbers. In capital, what happens the moment it slips into next year? So normally what you do is a rolling average, so that you take a 3-year, 4-year rolling average, which is really the way you should look at it. Some years will be lumpy, some years will be down, because some projects have taken a bit of time. So I think we should give that much of a sort of go through these numbers in a much more detail to understand where it is coming from. I think the key point which we've been highlighting is on MSME. I think this point about linking TREDS with GEMS, use of TREDS to give credit to MSMEs, the credit guarantee for MSME, I think we have not actually focused on how much it's going to work towards bringing up the health of MSME, which is a big issue. And in terms of the 7 sectors she's laid down for economic growth, she focused on 3 areas. Economic growth, the second one was how do we sort of accelerate and raise aspirations of people at the people level, which is what all this whole skilling, medical, 1.5 lakh people, caregivers, all that is part of that. And lastly, about Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, which is about underprivileged people. Now, when on economic growth, she's picked up 7 areas. MSME is one of them. She also spoke about building scale, and scale in very specific areas. And then about, this is very interesting, I thought it very interesting, because it was about rejuvenation of legacy industrial areas. 200 industrial will be rejuvenated, and I think it's needed, because when you go to some of the old industrial parks, they are not up to the mark in terms of technology. And the whole issue on infrastructure, again, I think 12.2 or number I picked up, I think it's a bigger number than last year. We can say it should have been more, but that's where it is. Lastly, I think one of the areas we've been highlighting is India will urbanize. And we have to bring vibrancy in our urban centers, and the city economic region, as she calls it, CER. It's a new term, but fundamentally it's about making cities a more viable, more vibrant places. And also part about financing, about the municipal bonds, 1,000 crore. I think it's excellent. I think in many ways.
See, the debate is, those are all very pious intentions, all of them. I am giving you one simple example. What is wrong with it? Now, when you commit 11 lakh crore, 12 lakh crore, and then you end up, by the end of the next budget, you end up spending 1 lakh crore, 2 lakh crore less, then what happens is...
It's not 10-20%.
No, wait.
It's only 3%.
No. Wait. You compare it with what happens. This is happening year after year. So what happens, I'll give you a concrete example. Suddenly now there are going to be 7 high-speed railway projects. By the way, Kolkata is left out. For Delhi, Kolkata is the busiest corridor, it is left out. But anyway, Varanasi gets 2 projects, but fine. Where is the first high-speed rail project today? And why, when was it announced, this bullet train? When was it announced? Till date, we have not seen the first bullet train in India.
No.
And 5 more projects are being announced. So, fine. If you are saying, why are you against the announcement? No, I want hundreds of high-speed rail projects. Just look at where China has gone with high-speed rail projects. Okay. My point is that don't just do these jumlas in the budget. When you are saying you are announcing a project, you complete that project. and let them people
Okay, so
benefit.
let him respond.
No, I just think, the word Jumla and all, I don't want to get into that. I think fundamentally good thoughts, good words, good deeds. That's what we believe in as private sector, and that's what government also should believe in. I think firstly it starts with thinking about where you want to go, then it's come out in words. But effectively talking about the 7 high-speed corridors and also speaking about the first corridor, obviously we have made land acquisition a very difficult part even for the government. I think it got stuck because I have actually traveled on the construction which has happened, and it is actually fairly impressive. You come to BKC and see this entire terminus which is being built right in the center of BKC for the first, the high-speed rail. It's completely new. Okay. So I think I would say the work is happening. And I understand where you're coming from. We all want things to happen faster than they are, yes, which is really what industry is also saying. From ease of doing business, we need to go to speed of doing business. And for speed of doing business, you need to remove many of the irritants. And if you look at exports, what has she done? Entire touch-free digital custom clearance. That's a game changer. We have been highlighting this. Why should anything be done on that basis? So each one of these are going to help us to improve the speed of transacting and speed of transacting.
At some level, it's a measure of the stability and the confidence of the government that despite we being just a few weeks away from elections in Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, Assam and Kerala, the usual temptation of having schemes for election-bound states has been left out. No public announcement of that at least. Rajiv Gowda joins us from the Congress party. Professor Gowda, you think the government is sitting pretty because usually just a few weeks ahead of announcement of polls, peak election season, Kerala this, Assam this, West Bengal this, Tamil Nadu this, she's avoided that temptation this time.
Well, that's such a relief, but it's probably a lack of imagination. Think about the bigger picture, Rahul. Essentially, this is a time when the Indian economy is facing a crisis with the amount of money being taken out both by Indians and by investors. What kinds of measures could have sent the right signals to allow for a reversal of this pattern? I don't see anything on that scale, etc. The other thing, if you look at the economic survey, it highlighted the urgent need to work on India's urban agenda. Now here we only have 5,000 crores that is allocated for urban-related developments. Many of the programs like Amrit or smart cities, etc., none of them have really had any significant impact on changing the infrastructure in urban India. So what you needed from these kinds of investments from the government is to crowd in private sector investment as well, which is something that continues to fall behind. Right? Instead, we don't see enough imagination there. Also, in terms of creating the kinds of initial investments that would then get much more private investment to follow through. So these sorts of, glaring challenges, I see those with this budget. And then, of course, while the same standard dialogues are, pushed out about youth and farmers and the poor, I'll have to look at the details of the budget to see what actually has happened in those directions, because there's certainly not anything there in her speech. And and when nearly half the country is trying to survive on agriculture, the kinds of investments in agricultural research, infrastructure, etc., no word on that except for about replanting lost coconut trees. So, I mean, really, this is, I think the government has somehow lost its way and really needs to take a step back and regroup. And as Ratin was pointing out earlier, we need to look at the actual realities. How much do they announce in the budget? How much do they actually spend? How much do they actually earn? All those assumptions are really something that we will get to know and verify as the day goes along.
But the markets, since we spoke last, Harsh, seem to have recovered quite a bit. They're almost down 1,800 odd points, now yes, about 500 odd points down.
No, I think the other points about people of Indian origin can invest bigger amounts, the buyback tax. I think F&O obviously applies more to the capital market derivative segments, so brokers, exchanges. But I think the broader picture of fiscal stability, macro stability is weighing in. I think it's now over to RBI. 4th to 6th February is the MPC meeting. One very quick point I would say, the budgeted estimate for capex in FY26 was 11.2 lakh crores. we ended up spending 10.97 lakh crores.
Correct.
So it's only a 2% shortfall. And now from that 2% shortfall, there has been an 11% increase. So it's not true that 1 or 2 lakh crores are not being spent. Those numbers are inaccurate. I think going forward, the most important part is the budget is forgettable, and that's a good thing. Mostly the budget is forgettable. We move on because the big stuff happened with GST, the deregulation commissions under the current cabinet secretary and a former cabinet secretary are in place. And then we have the monetary policy and we have trade agreements. So if we have forgotten this day after a week, it's not such a bad outcome after all.
Mr. Basa, how is the semiconductor mission so far coming along? They've announced a semiconductor mission 2.0, also laying a lot of emphasis on full stack design work happening in India. What is your assessment of the first phase of what we've seen on semiconductors?
So I think the first phase has seen the right kind of moves. Also, I would see the investments have gone in as expected. And if you look at the semiconductor ecosystem, there's a lot of focus around the ecosystem also, because you need the talent ecosystem. It's not just enough to say that I would like to have design capabilities. You need designers to come in back from many of the other countries to build a career in India. And for that, the ecosystem is required. And if you look at some of the other things which they're trying to do, you have to also support it with the rare earth piece. You also have to support it with what you're doing on the overall engineering skills program. When we are talking of some of these skill building issues, I think it's very critical for, the wave 1 and of course for the electronics piece for the wave 2 as well. And I think the other thing which you should also look at is, we have been talking about these CapEx programs. Now, if you think of what they have talked about, restructuring of power finance and REC, that can have the potential to unlock deep, capital pools which can go into some of the other sectors which would be talked of. And I think those can be really game changers for it. So I again think that, yes, the budget has a lot of it for a lot of sectors, but it's not really unrelated. If you look at all of them, they're somehow being related, whether it is, the focus of longevity to health, whether it is the semiconductor and the rare earth, or the, import of high-tech tools, the infra equipment which is coming in. All of those are very related, things. And I think when you're looking at the skilling program is not just about one particular sector. She has talked about design, she has talked about, gaming, she has talked about, also skilling in astrophysics, astronomy. So it's a very, very, broad-based skilling program.
But on the political front, the government clearly has some rough weather to deal with Donald Trump, who's announced that India will be cutting back on Russia and cutting back on Iran and buying from Venezuela. So a lot of these hush policy announcements apparently made by the Indian government being made publicly by Donald Trump. And he just keeps doing it again and again.
Well, we live in a world where we live in, so, where the dominant power has given up its own adherence to the so-called rules-based order. But again, coming back to this budget and how those, the fact that Venezuela oil would be sold to India and India is gradually buying less Russian oil shows that we are going towards some kind of trade agreement with the US. Is it being done in great fraternal spirit? No, but it's better than not having a deal. And it's a good follow-on to the EU deal, because now we are also negotiating from a point of strength, which is what Piyush Goyal mentioned to Vishnu yesterday, that we are not negotiating from any deadline. So yes, it's
Ratin, what's your best sense of what Trump makes of when Piyush Goyal and the Indian government and the EU get into a trade deal? How is he decoding this from what you can tell?
If I go by Truth Social, he doesn't decode, he reacts. So, decoding would be a massive increase in intelligence of the US president, which is at the moment unfortunately not available. So he will react in the way he usually does. He has looked at the deal. He has made one churlish comment in it already.
Scott Bessent has, in fact. Scott Bessent has multiple times.
Has made a churlish comment, but I think we are doing absolutely the right thing for a change. I've been very unhappy with Indian foreign policy for a while because we've been talking too much. All this Indic and Vedic and go forward and do this or hum great hai. Now we have shut up, and that's a very good thing. And the way we are dealing with Trump is just right. Keep quiet and do what you have to do, and you'll be good. I want to make a very quick, data point on the thing. Disinvestment for the 10th straight year in a row, they have missed their modest target and they've raised it again. Long term, that means you cannot expect the government of India to raise revenues through disinvestment. Taxes are maxed out, so we are now a revenue-constrained economy. There is not going to be any money going forward. to expand the size and scope of government in any significant way. I personally think that's not a bad thing. I don't think we should be expanding government beyond where it is. But now we have maxed out all our sources. So, and a bit of good news again, committed expenditure, which is expenditure the government has to make on GST compensation, on wages and salaries and stuff like that, that has come down slightly this year for the first time. That means the government's fiscal headroom has gone up a bit, and that's again a good thing. Finally and ominously, Finance Commission grants to the states have gone down by 15% this year, and that is not a good thing politically at all. It will make the southern states really mad.
Can I also just say, I've got a few more data points on the defense budget going up. A part of it has gone up from 48,000 crores to 63,000 crores. That is aircraft and aero engines. Now, aero engines are the holy grail of defense manufacturing. We have failed to do this for decades. We are now in an advanced deal with General Electric and are negotiating with Safran of France as well. This is for profound technology transfer, which feeds into our Atmanirbhar ambitions. So that has been outlined. So a key part of this defense deal is that there are three components. One for aircraft, which is possibly the Rafale deal. One for submarines, as I understand it. And it mentions aero engines. So that is where this negotiation will carry forward into a proper deal.
Sunil Mathur now joins us, CEO Managing Director at Siemens Limited. Mr. Mathur, you know, your reading of the budget and the focus that's been made on cities and trying to make India urban in a way that sees ease of living.
Yes, I mean, the reality is our big cities are bursting at the seams already. They are high cost, they are terrible on logistics, and they're difficult to attract talent for. And therefore, following models around the world, the only alternatives that we do have for an inclusive development is to move manufacturing out of the cities into the more rural regions. But that will require these rural regions to be upgraded in their infrastructure. And they will need roads, highways, access, they will need electricity, they will need upskilling of talent over there. And I think this is a step in the right direction. It's a long journey. But unless we start spending on these rural regions, creating these economic zones, so to speak, and developing these regions, we will actually be limiting ourselves if we do all our manufacturing in the large cities, in the metro cities. So I think it's a step in the right direction.
Radhika Kapoor, one of the efforts being made was to boost medical tourism by reducing taxes on medical tourism. To what extent do you think, I mean, it's obviously net positive for healthcare companies, but to what extent do you think it actually brings in a lot more people into India for healthcare treatments?
Well, I think they're definitely looking at health tourism as an important source of growth, as an important source of job creation. So I think this is a net positive over here. But I think, you have to have the right enabling ecosystem to actually facilitate that. So she also talked a lot about skilling in the health sector and having these qualified health professionals. There was a term she used for it. I'm forgetting APHIs. So unless that enabling ecosystem that provides quality services at competitive prices is created, these things don't actually fructify and translate into the desired gains. And on skilling, I do want to come back to the point that you had made earlier. I think it's quite interesting. They haven't talked just about skilling, but actually the transition from education to employment. And so that it's not just enough to educate people, but to make them employable, to make them job ready. There's also a panel which has been set up to look at the impact of AI on employment. And I think that's another big thing, because that will give a sense of, what are the sectors where jobs are going to be created, particularly for the youth. They started at the beginning by talking about how the youth were going to be a focus of the budget. And we know that the impact of AI, particularly when it comes to generative AI, has not been on entry-level jobs. So the jobs that the youth get when they enter the labor market. So I think those are very, how they're going to pan out and develop is one thing. But as statements of intent, I think these are very important issues because they are structural challenges. The other thing, also, I think it appears now that there's been an increase in allocation of in Narega. So if you look at it's
not a very major increase.
30,000 crores.
Yeah.
That's pretty big. That's a 25% increase.
No. Wait,
and it's counterintuitive because they were not.
No. It is now split. So you can't kind of add the Viramji and the Narega.
Why not?
Huh?
Why can't I?
No, because the nature of the scheme has changed. Earlier it was entirely a demand driven.
There's 1,22,000 crores for employment guarantee scheme. We can agree on that. That's a big rise.
No, not guarantee. You can't use the word
All
guarantee.
right. Employment generating scheme.
So ultimately, how much you are spending, that is a different question.
Okay, gentlemen, just hold on for one second. We've got Shrivar Kheruka, the co-chairperson of FICCI, joining us at this stage. Mr. Kheruka, thank you very much for being with us. Glass half empty or glass half full? How would you look at this budget?
Well, from a manufacturing perspective, I think it's a good budget. There's a lot of emphasis on Make in India, on Atmanirbharta, and I do believe that in areas such as electronic manufacturing, in areas such as rare earth mining and manufacturing, there are good outlays which have been kind of budgeted for, and I do believe those are absolute needs for the country to become self-reliant. So I'm quite excited about the budget and also the emphasis on manufacturing in particular.
Okay, I see Dr. Naresh Trehan is walking in, one of India's best-known healthcare experts, a lot of focus on medical tourism. To what extent do you think that starts showing results and by when? And do you see more people coming in for healthcare treatments to hospitals like yours?
So it's well known that India has the opportunity to offer the highest end of healthcare available anywhere in the world at a fraction of the cost. So it's not the misconception that it is poor medicine at cheap costs. It's high quality medicine at affordable costs. That's one. But the full potential has not been exploited so far because there is chaos on the ground. We are not organized. We don't represent the value of the quality of care that we have. But the government is trying many efforts now to put it out in the international space. So the groundwork is done, and the fact that some of the things that were mentioned in the budget today are very encouraging, including the fact that we have the huge potential of a Ayurveda along with modern medicine, of which is already creating a lot of traction for India, and we can actually ride this wave much higher, maybe double or triple the number of people and the value that we derive.
And what did you make of the emphasis laid on biopharma?
No, that's a very important factor that was addressed today, because so far the pharmaceutical industry, which has been, like we proudly say, is the pharmacy to the world, has been basically copycat drugs. So this allocation, this Biopharma Shakti mission that we talked about with 10,000 crore allocation, will encourage to do research, develop our own biologics and biosimilars, so that we can actually provide medicines of the frontier kind at a fraction of the cost that is available from the world. So I think it was a very important statement.
Dr. Trehan, there's also been a focus on mental health institutions.
Right.
There are none which exist in North India. One is being set up there. There, I believe one in Tezpur as well. And these were very specific points which were mentioned. So that's again welcome news for the health sector.
It is, no question, because this was one of the ignored sectors in North India especially. The South, Hyderabad and all these places, Bangalore and all, already have mental institutions. We didn't have any except for the old variety in Agra. So there is a lot of work to be done in North India, especially with the stresses of society today, and along with that, the stress of environment. The air quality and all that is adding a lot of stress to our population.
I think one of the things where I was a bit disappointed, I would say, on the healthcare side is that there was a lot being talked about medical tourism. There was also, if you look at the previous budget, it was all about access and affordability. But we didn't hear too much about the digital health infrastructure. Just like we are saying, if you look at overall India's growth, digital public infrastructure and the fintech industry and how it has taken off, on the medical side, we didn't hear that much on the digital health infrastructure, which I was expecting.
But can I just say, because I've got the points on health with me, apart from what Dr. Trehan referred to, there's a lot which was actually announced. Existing institutions for allied health professionals to be upgraded, 1.5 lakh caregivers to be trained in a coming year, right? That's huge. Hubs for medical value tourism to be created, 5 regional medical hubs. As was mentioned by Dr. Trehan, Ayush centers are coming up. Hubs to provide diverse job opportunities for medical service providers. This is actually one of the areas where we've seen more than...
more than that, what was mentioned was that there would be a committee formed that looks at education, skilling and employment.
Right.
So this whole stack becomes very meaningful because they were disconnected. So if you are going to start the programming at schools, skill development soon after that, and then because there's a huge need not only for India but for the world.
Yes.
And like they said that, like she said, that there will be 1.5 lakh caregivers required, not only to serve the Indians, but the whole world is hungry for them.
Yes.
Because there is an aging population. We are the only ones in the world who have a young population with requirement for skills that can be actually leveraged for the world.
The one thing that's becoming a political issue is leaders of pole-bound states, the likes of, say, Mamata Banerjee, Kanimori, all of them attacking the government, saying that hamare state ko kuch nahi diya. And that was, usually what we see, Dr. Roy, right before an election, in the pole-bound states, they have these announcements which economists like you don't like. But she's shunned that. Naturally, she'll come under political attack as a consequence of staying away from that kind of populism.
Well, they're underestimating the Prime Minister. I'm not necessarily a fan of what he does. He's never announced SOPs in a budget. They announced just before the election, sometimes in contravention of ethical rules, like in Bihar. Maharashtra, my own state, he did it just before the election. Bihar, he did it. Second, he's also pragmatic. You go to Tamil Nadu, you start announcing SOPs, they're not going to be impressed. So you're not going to win like huge amounts of brownie points. And Bengal, I want to be very polite about Bengal, considering my Bengal. I think there the rough and tumble of elections is what determines election victories and defeats. I don't think particular SOPs or otherwise determine it. It's very red in tooth and claw. So quite rightly, there was no need to take that economic angle in this budget, given the nature of the states.
And you can do it later, Harsh.
And in any case, if they wanted to do it, they do it 1 month before
10,000 rupee transfer happened just a few days before polls were announced.
The budget. It happens just before the election. So it catches eyeballs. That's electoral tactics.
But naturally the opposition
so long as it's within the model code of conduct. That's how elections are run. But I'm actually quite happy that more of the welfare spending is going on the state balance sheet as opposed to the union balance sheet, because they are more targeted, they're more easier to identify people who deserve that. Often they are women of a particular, below a certain cutoff. So I think this is the fact that the union government in the last decade has focused much more on capex and much more of the welfare schemes have gone to the state governments is actually overall an excellent development. And there is some research that there is nutritional benefit to some of these cash subsidies, in-kind subsidies. So sometimes we have a tendency to dismiss all of these welfare schemes very lightly, but there is a real benefit to that on the ground as well.
So the other thing that was included was the care for the elderly and geriatrics. Very important, because the aging population, while we have the demographic dividend, but we are also rapidly aging, and when we talk about 3%, 4% of the population is going to enter, that it still adds up to millions. So this has been not addressed well so far, but we all need to. The providers, the government, the financiers, we all need to, because there is a huge need for it and there is opportunity to develop these services.
What about devolution of funds to the states? Has there been any big change in that?
It's constant.
It's 1.4 lakh crores to states, with the government to retain a share of devolution at 41%.
That's constant.
So there's no change in that. It's flat.
Vertically it's the same.
No, it's given. The report is out.
No.
It's just been tabled.
This year is it included? This year they have maintained the...
No, this fiscal she has incorporated the
You take your
41%
mic,
devolution.
Prosenjit.
That she's done.
Let me just check the...
Please.
So this idea of setting up rare earth corridors in states like Odisha, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu to promote mining, processing, research in manufacturing, a lot of this are areas where countries like China have made substantial progress, and now India belatedly trying to catch up. Is it like in semiconductors we are catching up in certain for example, once some of these fabs start coming up from next year onwards, we're nowhere close to being world class, but at least we are catching up. Can we do the same in rare earths as well, Dr. Roy?
Of course we can. Of course we can, but also semiconductors, I'm a little worried because I wanted to ask you. Yeah. I'm really not interested in 2047, it bores me. By 2030, will our output of semiconductors significantly increase? If your answer is yes, then we have done a good job, because then it means over a 5 to 7 year period, we have become a player. I think there is no reason. I've studied the China rare earths problem, and of course, the Bhavans didn't listen. And I said, please look at this, it is very, very important. Better late than never, but if in a 7 year window we can make an impact on rare earths that is significant, and we have chosen the right places. Just I don't know about Orissa, but Tamil Nadu, Andhra, they're smart people. You can work fast there.
Okay,
so I'm quite optimistic.
We've got Amitabh Kant with us as well. Thanks very much, sir, for being with us. Some would say it's a holding budget. Some would say it's got a little bit for everything. The markets haven't sort of responded positively to this budget. The Sensex is sort of going up and down, but more down. How would you look at this budget? How would you characterize it?
Well, these are very difficult times right now. Geopolitically, the world is very fragmented, and therefore this is a very responsible budget, which brings down fiscal deficit to 4.3%, which brings down the debt to GDP ratio to 55.6%, which is still, despite that, lays a lot of emphasis on infrastructure, takes the spend up to 12.2 lakh crores, which in reality is 4.4% of your effective infra spend will be 4.4% of your GDP, and there's a huge focus on manufacturing. So I think it's a it provides continuity to the vision of Viksit Bharat, and it's a greatly responsible budget during very complex times globally. But I think, to my mind, the smartest move in this entire budget is the move to exempt data centers from tax, 100% tax, to 2047. If you look around the world, 75% of the total investment being made in the world is being made in AI and artificial intelligence and data centers. So if you are able to do this, you are able to drive AI, computing power, cloud infrastructure, data centers all to India. This is a big, big move, to my mind. It can have a path-breaking impact because the data is all here, talent is all here.
Listen to the
and this will be
as we lay emphasis on data centers, their argument has been that you have to equally lay emphasis on power creation, because these are hugely power consuming sectors, and therefore you're laying emphasis on data centers, giving these tax holidays, but no talk about equal emphasis being laid on new power capacity being created.
So let me put this in a perspective, Rahul. First of all, India is the only country which has one grid across the country. Europe doesn't have it. America doesn't have it. No other country in the world today has about 260 gigawatt of renewable energy. And therefore, you can link up renewable energy, you can link up grid to the data centers. It can be a remarkable process. You need to, of course, spend more money in terms of smartening the grid, etc. But India is ideally posed for it. Let's not be pessimistic. On the energy side, one grid across the country, only India has it.
Okay, the semiconductor mission is also something that's critical to everything that we are talking about, 40,000 crores to capitalize on the momentum of the semiconductor mission. So is that something that just had to be done, number one? And number two, we are talking about critical earths and, mining in India, that obviously feeds into the semiconductor mission. But India continues to import from China. In fact, one of the grounds we had premised for an improvement in ties is that they give us critical minerals, and they have said yes to that.
See, worldwide, the processing of critical minerals is right now being done in China. It's not about availability of critical minerals, it's about the processing technology. India needs to master processing technology. We may have rare earth like lithium, etc. in Kerala, Orissa, Tamil Nadu, etc., but we need to master processing technology. Second thing, what China does is it increases the cost, it increases the tariffs on raw materials, brings down the brings down the prices of the end product and ensures that nobody else manufactures it. Therefore, it will require a huge amount of government backing for the next 15 years, much like what we've done in data centers to make India the master of processing of critical minerals. But there's a huge emphasis on lithium, iron cell, critical minerals, and on nuclear power in this budget, which are all cutting-edge areas of growth. So this budget really takes the leap of technological leapfrogging in many ways. It also focuses on some job-creating sectors which have been hit by Trumpian tariffs, like marine, like leather, textiles, etc., so that our jobs are not impacted in a big way. And thirdly, I would say that there's a huge emphasis in terms of cities, because creating these, providing 5,000 crores to cities for these economic regions and linking them, calling them growth connectors, and linking 7 high-speed rail corridors, that to my mind will again be path-breaking in the long run.
Sure.
Can I just
please
respond? You see, we were just discussing the center state issue, and this is where the problem lies. If you look at the Finance Commission recommendations, they have just held it at the same level. So she has just done what the Finance Commission has recommended. So there is no change. But the real problem is, and that is where the capital outlay becomes very significant. Whereas its own capital expenditure, there is a shortfall, as he correctly mentioned, it's a minor shortfall. But in terms of grants in aid for creation of capital assets by states, there the shortfall is huge. It is enormous. It is over, almost over 1 lakh crore.
Yeah.
It's over 20%. So that is the problem. When you are saying that it is good that the states are being asked to do welfare and the government is rationalizing on that and focusing on capex, but the state governments also need to spend on capital expenditure. And you are absolutely right, because the state governments are responsible for far many things which are closer to the lives and livelihoods of the people on a day-to-day basis. If you are falling short on capital outlays for the states, and I'm sure that is not something that the Finance Commission is prodding them to do, they are doing it because they are not being able to generate revenues to share with the states adequately. So I think that is where I am the main critic. My critique remains that this is a very complacent budget. The government thinks as if the way we are going is fine and this is going to
okay, let's get a response
to on the revenue side and constraint. I mentioned it at the beginning. We will have a new GDP number on 27th February. So the 55.6% FY27 union debt to GDP is a target as per current GDP estimates. If that number goes up by 5%, 7%, 8%, mechanically your 55.6% overnight becomes 52%, 53%. Remember, the target is 50% plus minus 1% by 31st March 2031. So the government then has enough fiscal space to not only not consolidate, but slightly be expansive in its fiscal policy as well. So again, we'll get to know this within 4 weeks. And that could be one trigger for more devolution to states as well.
This is, you're saying nominal GDP will be higher than we are estimating now.
I think it's
then inflation would have been higher.
I think it's very much possible that the
then
GDP...
inflation would have been higher. So that's
No. The GDP rebasing that is going to be announced on 27th February...
That's real GDP.
No, I'm taking a nominal GDP as well.
You don't rebase nominal GDP. It is what it is. You rebase real GDP. So if it's nominal GDP, and if that's going to be higher by some miracle, it's possible they'll do that by going from real GDP up. Then your inflation is much higher than you expected.
No. A lot of things. It's not just not necessarily inflation. Let me just answer both.
Of course,
it's in both real GDP and nominal GDP. It's not necessarily that nominal GDP went up only because of deflator.
But there's no base question with nominal GDP. It is what it is.
No, I'm saying when the real GDP goes up, even the same deflator, mechanically the nominal GDP also goes up.
No. You have nominal GDP first. Then you apply a base effect to it, you deflate it, and you get a real GDP number. When you change the deflator and the base,
many things are going to change. It is not only about
nominal GDP will not change on 27th February.
Nominal
GDP is not an estimate. It is what it is. It's a calculation. You see. So only real GDP changes.
And it is not only the base year that is going to change, it is also the method in which we are calculating the deflator. So a lot of things will change.
Double deflators are coming.
Double deflators are coming. The estimation of the services sector will change.
I could be wrong, but my sense is this time the nominal GDP will also be increased. Let's see.
Okay, what I thought I'd do...
The short point I wanted to make is that you are, even if one takes your point to be correct, that, we may actually end up finding even higher GDP numbers after the revision. The point is that you are saying that, then the government would have, with the same fiscal deficit target, it will have more funds to spare. No, but
that's the percentage of GDP.
Yeah, but if the entire strategy is based upon rebasing numbers,
I'm not saying that's what it's based on.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, hold on for 1 second.
You are talking about a 1 lakh crore
Prosaji, one second, hold on. I thought what I would do for the benefit of our viewers just tuning in, as we get into the real micro details, is to outline 5 areas where there have been significant changes. It's a somewhat unusual budget in the way it was presented. We aren't, for example, talking about tax rates that you and I are going to be paying. We're looking at tax in a very different format. However, the areas where Nirmala Sitharaman has really made a mark is CapEx. That's gone up to 11 lakh crores. Capital expenditure critical for the India growth story. The semiconductor mission has seen an investment of 40,000 crore rupees. So again, that's an area which, tied into the rare earths policy of the government, is very important. That's critical for manufacture. It is critical for electronics as well. Health found very detailed mention. There was a detailed mention of health when it came to setting up new centers, when it came to biologics, the pharmacy industry in India, as it were, and several other areas, improving the efficiency of health facilities across the country in areas of excellence. Defense saw something quite remarkable. I say remarkable because I've never seen a jump of approximately 21% in the defense budget. She didn't talk about it, but we've got the details now, and that includes what seems to be an allotment for massive capital expenditure towards new aircraft, submarines, and possibly aero engines. And finally, taxation. And I would suggest that part B of what Nirmala Sitharaman actually referred to had a great deal when it came to cutting down on punitive measures for tax offenders, making it simple, giving even those who have divergences or differences in opinion on how much tax they should pay some more time to actually go ahead and file their taxes. Several areas have got benefits as well. So these are broadly the areas. Would you agree? 5 areas, Ratin, that were the highlights for me. Right. But we still don't know what's going to cost more and what's going to cost less.
Yeah, we are slowly getting an idea of the overall fiscal strategy of the government, which is compared to the BE, revenue GDP ratio down. The government has, again, I